Good evening and welcome to our October work session for the Suffolk Public School Board. Thank you for coming and driving through all that traffic. Dr. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to open up with our SPS facilities update, which will be led by Mr. Jeff Harris from RRMM. Just want to give the board a few reminders before I call Mr. Harris up to the podium. 3 attachments that you have in Electronic School Board, ESB, the original executive summary that was done by Cooperative Strategies and RRMM dating back to 2021, as we knew we were basically using that as our guide for facility improvements as well as facility replacement, 100% based on the Facility Conditions Index. About a year or so later, the board made a pivot in their thinking and wanting to ensure that we were going to make the biggest precedent for our schools that had mobile units for safety concerns. The second attachment and the third attachment are 2 requests that came from our last board meeting as a part of the discussion. We have an attachment that describes a review of what a PK through 8 school will potentially look like, as well as taking a look at some of the necessary needs and review of Driver Elementary School site. The fourth handout that actually the school board members have at their desks with them, at their seats with them, and that Ms. Gardner will be uploading to ESB. We had also asked RRMM to do a cost analysis based on the 2020 dollars for some of our projects, such as Northern Shores, if there was going to be a Southwestern edition, the Florence Bowser edition. As we know, the facility study said that Florence Bowser was going to be our next elementary school to have a peak in enrollment, which is happening right now. If there was going to be a new elementary school, demolition of Kilby Shores, demolition of Nansemond Parkway, demolition of Elephants Fork, the 3 schools that Mr. Napier refers to as the triplets, as they fall in order with some of the requests from the school board on the CIP, and dollars for a new middle school at 600, 700, or 800 students and or 1,100 and 1,200, as well as a K through 8 school. The cost comparison of 2020 through 2024 is what you see in the handout that is at your seats. So this is a discussion topic based on us having conversations from our CIP meeting, as well as some of the discussions that took place from our joint meeting. At this time, Madam Chair, I'm going to call Mr. Jeff Harris, who's also assisted by Mr. Mark Probst from RRMM, to answer any discussions, and Mr. Harris will go into each one of these handouts in greater detail. Mr. Harris?
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeff Harris with RMM Architects, and this is Mark Probst. And we are happy to answer any questions you guys have about any of the topics that Dr. Gordon just mentioned. Should I advance this slideshow? There's no slide. Okay.
I think, Mr. Harris, if you want to start with, let's take a look at the Driver Elementary School site.
Okay.
If you want to take a start with that.
Sure. So we looked at the potential and possibility of developing the driver site. There's one important consideration to take into account, and that's the location of the driver site. It's not very centrally located to most of the population within the city. So that would be a first concern, its lack of convenience for the majority of the population. But renovating a 60-year-old school can present several challenges compared to building one that's new. First and foremost, when we had our civil engineer look at the site, they found out that it's zoned for residential low medium density. So a business use facility in that particular location is not allowed. You would have to apply for a conditional use permit, and that would have to go in front of the Planning Commission and City Council for public hearing before we could even consider developing that particular site. Another issue is the existing parking lot. It currently doesn't meet today's standards. We would have to basically replace everything that's there. We would have to include a stormwater management system, a BMP pond. We'd have to redo all the paving, curbs, landscaping, and then also expand it. So code requires, or zoning ordinances require you to have a certain number of parking spaces based on people that you anticipate being in the building. We would have to increase the parking significantly. Let's see. His anticipated cost at this early stage in the process would be roughly $2 million, and that's just for parking, stormwater management, and expansion of the parking. So that's a cost to consider. If we demolish the building, a new smaller building would require less parking. We're anticipating, let's just take 22,000 square feet as an example. I did an analysis and determined that for a business use building, 175 square feet per person is a good starting point. If we anticipate 125 occupants in the building, that brings us to about 22,000. We would have to look at it and program it based on school administration's needs. So that 22,000 square feet is just kind of a starting point. It may have to go up from there. There's higher costs associated with renovating older buildings because the need to update all of the outdated systems. We would have to comply with modern codes. And since we're getting in and doing a significant amount of renovation, we would be forced by code to renovate the entire building. It's about 60,000 square feet, which is more than you would need for that type of administration building. So you would be renovating extra square footage that you don't really need. To renovate the building in its entirety, we'd have to look at structural improvements to the exterior walls for lateral loads, improving the building energy efficiency. We'd have to put in new windows, thicker roof insulation, and the existing walls, if they have any insulation at all, would not meet current codes. We'd have to look at ADA upgrades throughout the building. We'd have to comply with new ASHRAE standards for fresh air and ventilation intake. And then there's potential for failing water supply lines and sanitary lines. We can have those scoped, see what kind of condition they're in. But a building that's of this age, there's a really good chance that if it's functioning now, it won't function too much longer into the future. We'd also have to consider electrical panel upgrades. And one note that I wanted to mention, that if we had to increase the roof insulation, it has a gravel stop edge right now, we would have to treat the entire building edge at the roof to account for the insulation that would be exposed. So we'd have to raise up a parapet all the way around the building to conceal that extra thickness of insulation. There's unforeseen issues that you might encounter, such as problems with asbestos, lead paint, or other structural weaknesses that aren't we'd have to do an analysis to see if we have any slabs that are settling, foundations that are settling as well. So that can increase renovation costs significantly. Functionality is another important aspect to consider. You would be taking classroom-sized space and trying to make that work with offices. Yes, you can leave some of those walls in place and partition it off inside that classroom space, but is it going to be an ideal situation? We'd have to do an analysis to determine that. There would be a lot of spaces. You need large meeting space, you need conference rooms, things of that nature. So you would be shoehorning yourself into that building and trying to make it work. Money can be spent on improving the finishes inside the building to make it look better, but functionality-wise, is it delivering what you need it to do? And then there's long-term costs. Even after renovating, older buildings have higher long-term maintenance and operational costs. Walls aren't as energy efficient as a new facility would have. There's going to be, on monthly costs, your heating and cooling would probably be much higher than in a new building. So any questions about some of those aspects that we would need to really study hard in advance of moving forward?
I have a few questions. Okay, so one thing is the parking lot. So you were saying that it's not enough parking space for how many admin. So my question is, and I guess this is for you, how many admin are we talking about?
We're looking at 88, but we also take in consideration visitors to our building for human resources and budget and finance. Those are probably the ones, as well as anyone coming from administrative services. So as an example, when we were taking a look at the human resources building across the street, I think we're right around 120 slots total that we were going to need.
Okay. So I'm just trying to compare that to when the school was functioning. How many parking spaces did we have then? Because it was teachers there and parents came. So I was just trying to see what would be the big difference for that one. Also, because it just seems like everything is just like a no, 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 no. So I was just trying, was there anything that we could do or that was positive that we could glean from the space? Not saying I'm not challenging what you're saying. I'm just like everything was just, you can't do this, you can't do this, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. Was there anything about the building or the space that we could just renovate or use? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, we can certainly renovate that building, but you've got to decide if the money that you're going to spend is going to be worth it, and is it going to deliver the end product that you need for your administration building. Its appearance on the exterior would have to be improved. I'm not sure it has the right curb appeal that you might want to present to the public.
Right.
So it is definitely doable, but what I'm suggesting is renovating that building would probably be more costly than if you were to build something new. Now, if you're starting with a building that's standing, you're ahead of the game in some aspects. You've got walls in place. The problem is when they don't meet the code structurally. When you do a partial renovation, you don't always have to do quite as much as you would do if you do a full renovation. So if you were interested in trying to partition off that existing building and only take a piece of it, we'd have to have a discussion with the building official to see if he had any concerns about, putting up a separating wall from that rest of the existing space. And from my understanding, it's not in really good shape at the moment. Most of the windows have been broken, is that correct? So if there was a part that was not occupied by the school administration, you would have to do something to those windows to at least protect them from outside conditions, elements, weather, humidity, things of that nature.
Okay. So have you anybody been to the school at all to look at it?
I have not been by it recently. When we did the facility condition assessment, I know it wasn't one that was on the list, but we did go by there and take a look at it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I've actually been to the facility within the last 90 days, toured that along with the one I wish we would have had this type of discussion about, which was Freeney also, but I guess it is what it is. I think it wouldn't be wise to throw good money after bad, but I'm talking about repurposing the usage of the land and space. For an example, at the John F. Kennedy complex, you have a new technology office, and you also have a CSEP. and these are buildings that you all designed, would one of those buildings, or like the CSEP building, a building that size, would that be compatible for that property?
I think the site is large enough that we could make a building like that fit very well, but we would have to demo the old building to make room for it.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Considering the number of parking spaces we would have to provide for this building, I don't think we have quite the acreage to make it work unless that building was demolished.
Yeah, I'm not with saving the building. I've been in it. I mean,
Okay.
between the vandalism and people, using it for other purposes, it's been brought down. I worked in it before it was closed now.
Sure.
So I saw it before it was closed, and I seen it recently within the 90 days. My question is, if the northern Suffolk corridor is booming, the growth is happening at a rate accelerated than what we projected or what was projected and told to us, why not repurpose the land to at least be a primary that would serve pre-K, kindergarten, if that's possible, to pull those students out of Florence Bowser, Creekside, and if we have room, I know we're about to do an expansion in Northern Shore, so I don't even think we even got to go that way. But I mean, if you can pull out of Creekside, Nassman Parkway, and Florence Bowser and have a pre-K kindergarten school site there, it works in other divisions. We already own the land. To buy land in that area of the city, it's difficult. And me as a board member, I'm not looking for you all to tell me what we can do pretty much on our property. I'm looking for your expertise about the building. I get it. Tear the building down. But as a board, it's our job to provide what we would like to see done with our property. And if we don't see no other usage, then we recommend we got two options. We can either sell it outright or turn it over to the city. So we already own the property. Tear the building down, pre-K, kindergarten, if possible. I think that's more bang for our buck. We already got a prototype design with the CSEP building. That's what I'm looking at.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
So that building is in my borough, and that's been the majority of the feedback I've gotten in the past 3 years has been about that building, other than like hot button issues that pop up before the board. And there's been a great deal of discussion. I know comments were made that, no, we haven't talked about this enough. I've heard that feedback recently in the past 2 weeks. Dr. Gordon and I have an ongoing conversation about this. Roger Fawcett and I have an ongoing conversation about this. The question is, with our CIP, as you've probably seen, it's not anywhere in the scope of possibility to address this within the next 10 years. And you can guarantee in the next 10 years, the cost to do all of this is going to go up, not down. What is the bare bones minimum it would take for us to maintain the land, demolish the building, grade the property so that we could lease it for another purpose to someone else? What would that still cost us to maintain? And then the second part, Dr. Gordon, what are we paying on property taxes and utilities, maintenance, anything, to maintain this space?
I mean, we can provide go ahead.
In terms of maintenance, we spend very little at this point. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. About 3 years ago, we gave up. It got so bad in there, we had to go board it up. We couldn't keep the windows in it. There is no part of that building that at this point has not been damaged. So we boarded it up. We did the best we can. We sold everything that we could sell inside the building. It's gone. We sold all the HVAC units, save for 2, on the cafeteria. They've all been, I don't know if you probably have. They've been ripped open, all the copper's out of them. That's all that's left there now. We sold the whole unit, but they didn't want the whole unit. They just wanted the copper out of it. So we really don't do much of anything. Now, the only utilities, there is still electricity to that building. I don't know how much we pay. It's minimal, but there is still water running through that building. Part of it runs to the ball fields in the back, I believe. That could be fixed easily. But as far as maintenance at this point, minimal, utilities, minimal. Honestly, the building's not worth spending money on.
Sure.
To add to that, though, the only part that we still are paying utilities for is the gymnasium area
Correct.
for heating, water, and and cooling when it's being used by Nansemond River High School.
Yep. The wrestling team still uses that gymnasium.
Did you ask what it would cost to maintain the site if the building was demoed?
What would it cost us to demo it and then do the grading to make it usable for someone else to come in and use the land, as has been suggested by some other folks, that we maintain this land as an asset and lease it to someone else instead of turning it over to the city? I want to know what cost would we pay to do the demolition and grading versus turning it over to the city and it becomes their responsibility.
You're probably in the $5 to $10 a square foot to demo the building. You would probably have to see how much hazardous materials are in there first. They would have to be abated before you could demo it. So there's a price range there that it would be hard for us to nail down.
Yeah, I understand. So just basically, here's my position going on record. I understand we don't ever want to give up a valuable asset. That would be idiocy. This is not a valuable asset. And to turn it into a valuable asset, we've either got to wait 10 years for it to fit into our CIP, or we've got to bump this ahead of buildings with students and mobiles in it. And neither of those seem like wise choices based on the overwhelming feedback I've gotten from my community and the discussions and presentations we've had here. I don't think it's feasible, and it's not going to be cost effective in 10 years. It's not going to happen in less than 10 years if we do our due diligence to replace the buildings where children are currently in and learning. So I just wanted to go on record making my point.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the write-up that you gave us for the replacement cost, and it tells us there that the demolition of the existing building would be around $350,000. Would that also include the unforeseen issues that you talked about that might revolve around the asbestos and lead paint? When you demolish a building, do you have to consider for those? Okay.
You do, and that number is probably a little bit light, and that would be my mistake. It should be a little bit higher than that.
Okay. I would be interested in seeing, like Vice Chair Howell said, the cost of what it would take to demolish that building and get that ground graded so that potentially we could lease it or look at, sometime down the line when the CIP allows us to build on that again. But I would like to see a cost for just only demolishing it and grading it and getting it prepped for
Sure.
something.
We can certainly provide a better number, more accurate number.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
thank you. We have to be wise with our assets. The person that makes this land is not making it at the rate that we would need it to keep up with the growth in the northern end. Nor can we find property in the northern end at that size at the cost that it would cost to demo. You're talking about a congested end of the city of residential development. We already own the land. I think it would be not wise to turn over something that could potentially be used down the road. Even if you had it as a bus parking depot for the bus drivers on the northern end so they can stop overcrowding Nansemond River when Nansemond River have baseball games. You have an alternative site because Nansemond River fills up for softball and baseball games. I know that because I was a bus driver. But to turn it over to the city and to go shopping for land like that, because if you're looking at the building cost, at the risk of missing something, you don't have the cost of purchasing new land. and land is skyrocketing. So I would suggest that to tear the building down, if the baseball league that is there now is interested in maintaining with the utilities, then they foot the bill. Let them pay for it. But when it's time for us to develop and build, we would be able to have land already owned by the school board that would be an option that would not have an additional financial cost to us, versus this is what we did years past. We gave up Robinson Elementary School. The city took it, turned it into something else. We need another school to relieve overcrowding in some areas and help with our operational costs. But we gave up a school that could have been torn down and rebuilt or whatever, even though we don't have it right now in our CIP. We don't know how we may be 10 years from now. But one thing I can tell you, the land in that area is going to be extremely higher to purchase. That's why when we was doing the CIP and you all came and presented to us, you told us that John Yates was big enough to build at its present location. And the board was interested in that because it would help us save money. But to turn over this prime real estate in a driver area to give to the city is not being a wise steward over our resources. So I would suggest that the board consider long and hard before we vote swiftly again to give over surplus or what is deemed as surplus property, because we don't see how we can use it today. There may be usage tomorrow. We may not be on the board, but we have at least set that next board up to have something to look at or some step forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Barrett?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. What's the current acreage of the driver property? Approximately.
It's pretty small. It's just shy, I believe it's just shy of 13 acres,
13 acres.
which honestly is too small for an elementary school.
That's the point I was,
Yeah.
my next question
That's
was,
including the ball fields.
most elementary schools, Mr. Napier, Dr. Gordon,
Yeah,
There's a-
15 acres plus, Hill Point is 17 acres.
right,
And that's as small as we can go.
that's right. Most of them want 20, 25 acres.
20 acres is better, 25 acres
what I was-
is a luxury.
And the biggest challenge to your point, Ms. Barham, about that question that we've all noticed, situation like Hill Point, some of our other schools, the reason that Mr. Napier and I have been discussing 20 to 25 is the sweet spot because of parent drop-off lines. And so we need to have larger parking lots in order to have the flow-through. We also want to make sure that we're avoiding and that we have plenty of space between bus pickup and drop-off, front parking lots and parent drop-off lines. So we're kind of circling that number to be right around 22, 23 acres right now for any elementary school that we potentially would build in the future.
That's the point I was going to ask. I know when we built Pioneer Southwestern, as soon as we built it, the parking lot was inadequate. And when you go there today, it's still inadequate, even though it's been enlarged some. So these are things that we need to consider too. That's the reason I asked about the acreage, because that, to me, is a drawback right there.
Mrs. Byron speaks to parking lots. When we built Southwestern, when we built Hill Point, when we built Creekside, there is a city calculation that dictates how many parking places we're allowed to put in. We discussed that with them. When we built Florence Bowser, they allowed us to double that size. So, and what Dr. Gordon's referring to is, it's not just the parking places, it's the stacking lane that's required to weave cars in there so that when parents come to pick up and drop off, we don't have cars spilling out onto the roadway. And it's big, even though Bowser's twice the size as most of our elementary lots, we still don't have enough space there because they still get out on Anselman Parkway. So the bigger, the better. And I think, honestly, in my discussions with some of my colleagues in the city, I believe we could even get that larger in future buildings if we wanted to, simply because of the problems that we have with cars backing out onto these main roadways.
Madam Chair. I see her. I'm sorry.
When we were talking about places, one of the reasons that I had asked that we look at that is because it used to be many, many years ago, it used to be a central office for Nesbitt County. That used to be where the school board was. And that was the reason that I had asked about it as we were looking for a central office building because we already own the property. But given the fact that it's in such bad condition that it's going to cost us a building, actually, a new building to build it. And it's not in a place that we would really want to be when it comes to a business office with people moving in and out. That's why we are where we are. I do have a question, though, and I don't know who can answer it for me at this point. When we're talking about renting things and owning things and keeping things, as I understand it, when we no longer use something for educational purposes, then we are supposed to turn it over. But we have to get permission from the city to keep it, to use it for whatever reason. And I don't know if we even be able to do that. Is there anyone who can answer that question for me? If we no longer use it for educational purposes, if we no longer use a school or facility, I thought we discussed that, for educational purposes, and we're no longer using it for educational purposes, then what do we have to do?
Yeah, Mr. Waller had given us an opinion on the different options of selling it, giving it back to the city, selling the property, or renting or leasing it out for other purposes. But to your point, you have to get basically permission from the city to be able to do that.
Right.
Because of how it's actually listed in code. And that's kind of goes back to the process that Mr. Harris was talking about of what the land is actually zoned for.
Right.
So that would be probably a year-long process itself to even determine what the next step would be if we're not using it for the original purpose that the building was designed for.
And if we've had to board it up because all the windows are broken out, and if it's become a hazard in the neighborhood, it would seem that the prudent thing to do, since we can't use it to build a school because there's not enough space for it, is not to use it for the purposes, but to do whatever we need to do. Now, when we think of, I think that's a great idea to have a regional preschool program, but in our looking at some of the schools that we're going to build, may I suggest, Mr. Superintendent, since I'm just going to be here 3 more times, may I suggest that we consider, when we're building our schools, putting those classrooms in the building, because we have a system. I know that we count the number of kids that can go in a class, but now that we're having to teach 3-year-olds, and I know I've said this with regard to special education, now that we're taking children in who are 3 and 4, and now that we're working with them, the classes aren't 25 and 30 kids. The classes are much smaller, so we need more rooms and we need bigger buildings. So it makes sense to have some regional spaces. For instance, when we build the new Elephants Fork, we need to have spaces in there for preschool classes in addition to the regular 20 and the 18 or the 20 and the 24 sizes when we build additions to places like Northern Shores and additions to our other schools where we do have land spaces. Now, I missed the conversation where we had land space at, what were we talking about, expanding? Because I know that we don't. When I looked at John Yates, I thought we needed new land for that. I thought we needed a new place for John Yates. I thought that's what's in the plan, new land. I thought it was on there, but anyway.
They gave us options.
The thing about John Yates, there is enough land there to do something similar to what we're doing at John F. Kennedy. The problem is baseball fields and athletic fields, and Parks and Rec uses that football field off to the side. So you've got all those activities going on. But we also had that situation at John F. Kennedy, and we made some arrangements. But as far as land itself, when you think of land at these schools, you've got to think about all those ball fields because those belong to you as well.
Right. And I also thought about the fact that that's going to be a 1,000-person school when I'm looking at John F. Kennedy, which is 800, and that's supposed to be, the proposal is for 1,000 students rather than for 800 students. That's what was on my sheet, and that's what I understood. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to fit that on there, as well as the fields that we need and all the other things that we need on that space, since homes have been built all around there.
As good as these guys are, I don't think they could make all that fit.
Yeah. That's
Not
what I
ball
was thinking.
fields and a new school.
Yeah, and so, you know, and then John Yates has an additional layer because of the Little League associations that are out there. And the extra 200, we're talking about 8 classrooms to be able to do that. So I'm not as concerned about that part for the space. In prior CIPs that we've given to the board, Ms. Forsman and Mr. Napier have included $2 to $3 million for any land purchase for any new building, right? That was yesterday's dollars. So it's probably a lot more than that now, especially with all of our land assessments going up over the last, X number of months. So we're probably in the $4 to $5 million range for any land acquisitions that would be part of any new school site. And that's the conversation that Ms. Forsman, Mr. Napier, and myself have already had with the city manager and his team. Whatever the cost is, because everyone agrees, everyone's on board with having Elephant's Fork in a different location. Add $5 million to that, and that's for land acquisition. The second part, to your point, Dr. Brooks Buck, and kind of piggybacking on what you said, Mr. Riddick, yes, we agree on having a centralized pre-K. That's what we're looking at. Any classroom that has, our 3 and 4-year-olds has to have a bathroom in the classroom. But to the points that Mr. Harris had made earlier, we believe that would be easier in a building such as Elephant's Fork that already has structure.
Right.
Already has structure in place, and it's a more centralized location, which would then allow us to fill up, to take out some of those pre-K spaces to deal with the enrollment that we're having in other parts of the city, so that those pre-K classrooms at Hill Point, at McBen, at Oakland would then potentially go to the Elephant's Fork site. And so we believe that a renovation there may be less than some of the figures you're seeing on the sheet for Driver Elementary, because the main thing that would have to occur would be the installation of bathrooms in some classrooms. We already know we'll be getting rid of the trailers, but the Elephant's Fork site is in much better condition. And so that's part of the reason, and it's centrally located. That's part of the reason why we were kind of leaning towards that a little bit more in some of the discussions that we've had with the board for the CIP.
Can I just make a correction? I told you earlier, and technology is a wonderful thing. I can pull this up on my phone. I didn't realize that, but I can't see it. Driver, I told you just shy of 13. It's actually 9.7 acres, which is
Okay.
even less.
Okay. So it's
So-
more.
Madam Chair, I'm glad you brought that up because, I'm a person, before I speak, I like to have all of my ducks in a row as well. And Drivers is 9 acres, but I'm suggesting a primary school. I'm not saying an elementary school. I think, once again, we're manipulating words here. There's a primary school in Suffolk that is built, that is currently in operation, that is on 3 acres of land. You may know that's a Head Start building on Davis Boulevard. And I'm looking at the city records now. I like stuff like this. And that lot size is 3.7 acres of land. And my concern is when we're making decisions and we don't even know what we have at Drivers. And what I mean by that is you're making a decision to turn something over. Do you know the value of the land? The value of Drivers Elementary School, according to the city of Suffolk, is $4,496,000. So to turn it over when the code, per the attorney that he released out to us, give us an opportunity to sell this land, I think $4 million can solve a lot of issues we got that we was talking about: building and maintenance, warehouse, central office. So what I'm saying is, let's not be so rash to say we have to turn something over, because we don't have to do anything at the moment. Now, if this building has been vandalized so much, this is what I would like to ask the board to do. is, one, I want to know, were charges brought upon the people who did it? Were they asked to pay restitution? And to what extent have damages occurred at our hands or other departments of the municipality's hands? Because we have buildings that is being torn up, torn down, and people is just getting away. It's in a community where everybody has Ring cameras pretty much. Everybody's active. The baseball fields, and I get it, we have little leagues, but I'm not up here to work in the interest of little leagues. I have a little league myself, so it's nothing personal. But I'm here to make sure that we as a school division move in the right direction. So to turn over a $4.5 million, I'm gonna round up, a $4.5 million property over when it only costs you $350,000 at minimum to tear it down, financially does not make sense, and it's not a good business deal for the Suffolk City School Board. I suggest and I recommend, and everything that I'm quoting to you has come from the City of Suffolk's assessor's office, and this is their total assessed value as of 2024, 2025 that they have released. I'm just asking us to hold the horses on signing it over, and let's explore all options. If we are going to tear the building down, let's tear it down. If the fire department want to use it for training ground, blaze it up, then you don't have to do abatement. So that's something that can be, I mean, I hate to say it, I think I'm the only person in politics that's dumb enough to say it out loud, but that's one way to get rid of the issue. Let them train with it. So you have 4 points.
Fire department already uses it.
Yeah, but not the way I'm talking about it. Let them send it up in smoke. It's a building that can be done. It's worth $4.5 million in land. $4.5 million. Why would we turn it over and don't get nothing out of it? All of us agree that sometimes it's difficult to get the money we need to do the capital campaigns that we need to have done. That $4.5 million could have definitely built phase 2 at the maintenance building shop. It was a step in the right direction. It's more than what you got towards it now. So although we shaking our heads saying no, that 4.5 would have been helpful. But to just turn it over, you're still left with nothing versus selling it yourself, which is allowable by code and by our policy that Attorney Waller has read and out to us, then just giving it back. So this is my recommendation to the board. Tear the building down, shop around with the land and see what you can get for it. This is to the board, how we want to use our property.
Okay, because we need to move on to the next one, but
I was
Wait.
just,
Can-
May I speak? Thank you. I'll make this quick. I just want to say there's merit to all of this discussion, and I'm definitely intrigued by it, but I think this has been a discussion that's gone on for a while for Driver with no action. And from what I gather from a few citizens that I've talked to, they're tired of the school and the condition it is there. So I think that the major priority for us right at this point is not necessarily even figuring out the future of the land, but that building that is dilapidated and is an eyesore and is a hazard for the citizens in the Sleepy Hole Borough. So with that being said, I have two questions for you. What would be the timeline to get an estimate? And then once that estimate came through, if we did look at it and did favorably consider that stage one for us as a school board would be to consider demolishing it and grading the land, what would be a timeline to actually get that job done? Like, what would we realistically, if we chose to do that and hold off on the long-term decision on what to do with the land, what would that timeline for getting the estimate and then actually getting the job done? Can you give me an idea?
I think we could probably have a fee for you in a couple weeks. We could start design right away and probably have it ready in a couple months to bid it out. And while 9 acres isn't adequate for a new elementary school. It's certainly adequate for something, so if you guys are able to agree on what that use could be, I'm sure it can become very useful.
Thank you. So you have
Yeah.
one more question?
I do. As I
Right, then
said,
we're gonna
as I
move on.
understood what Mr. Wallace said, we have to have the city's permission to do any of that. And as I understand what we do, we don't tear down buildings, do we? We don't demolish buildings on our own.
Well, we have.
What budget item, where would we get almost $500,000 to demolish a building? That's a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that would have to be a part of the CIP because of the total amount that it would cost. And so then you begin to kind of make some decisions. Okay, like one of the earlier projects that the board has listed on the CIP is work to be done at CCAP, which right now is right around $4 million or so, I believe. So if you wanted to take 500,000 from that, that would be something to take a look at, that the city, of course, would then approve as a part of their CIP, and then we have to determine the year that they want to do that. So that's basically my best answer for that. But Ms. Lindley, if your question was not just the design, you were asking how long would it take to actually demolish the building, correct? And so, Mr. Harris, Mr. Prost, or Mr. Napier, are you saying 3 months?
I would say about 3 months. They would have to first go in and abate the hazardous materials before they could just come in and level the building.
Madam Chair, would the winter months have, there's not going to be any bearing on that. Like just let's suppose the world's utopian and we were able to move this along without any hiccup along the way, it could go right through the winter?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next.
All right, we're going to ask the board to switch gears and take a look at the attachment for key consideration for pre-K through 8 schools. This was also a discussion topic. I think this kind of generated, Ms. Lingliff, I believe you were one of the ones that had brought this up as we were taking a look at potential Kilby Shores and Forest Glen, since we had conversation that I think there was a lot of support from both city council and the school board of having them both on the same site. But then the conversation began to elevate to consideration for pre-K through 8. So, Mr. Harris, I'll kind of turn it back over to you if you want to discuss some of the highlights that are on the handout that the board has.
Sure. So we see school divisions doing PK8s across the state. A lot of it occurs in rural counties. It is definitely doable. There's a lot of considerations that come into play when you think about organization and layout, because one of the most important things to consider is how much interaction should or could be allowed between the lower grade students and the 8th graders. So that's I guess probably the biggest hurdle you have to get over initially. Is everyone okay with that? And if so, how do you manage that, and how do you mitigate a lot of the interaction, or as much as you can? So I guess that's a policy decision that you guys have to discuss and make sure you're okay with. A lot of times community can be very outspoken about mixing, kindergartners or pre-K, first graders with 6th, 7th, 8th graders. One of the advantages to having a PK8 is that you're reducing the number of bus routes through the same neighborhood, right? So how do you manage that disparity in age with the students on the same bus? We have seen where some school divisions have additional monitors on the bus to make sure that there is separation, that there's, little to no interaction. So there's a lot of things to consider. I tried to put together some pros and cons for a PK8 scenario. First, I would say a PK8 requires less overall acreage for a single site, right? You would have one site versus 2 sites between a middle school or an elementary school. Now, if you're going to put both of them on the same site, that helps. That helps the argument for a traditional model over the PK8. One of the cons for that related to this is it does require more overall acreage on a single site because your building is going to be larger. And there's a lot of factors and there's a lot of reasons, and I'll get into some of those in a minute. But you have to have, you've got to provide play areas for 10 grade levels now, right? I know your PK and K can share play areas, first, second can share, and then second, third, fourth, fifth can sometimes share. But then you've got to provide those athletic facilities for your middle schoolers. So you've got a lot more stuff on site, which forces your site to be larger than if it was just a regular middle school or a regular elementary school. I mentioned the fewer bus routes through the same neighborhoods. And then the con for that is different age students on the same bus, increased supervision during times when students might interact. Another pro would be minimal reduced operating expenses. One example here is if you had a separate elementary and a separate middle, you might have a principal and an assistant principal at each. So that's 4 administrators. If you have one PK8, maybe you have one principal and 2 assistant principals. So you go from 4 to 3. So, you know, there's some small offsets like that. Slight reduction in space requirements. For example, the admin office. You wouldn't be duplicating 2 admin offices, one in this building, one in that building. But the admin office that you end up with may be slightly larger than either one of those. Same thing goes for the kitchen. Your kitchen, while you have one, it's going to be larger. And then mechanical room space, same kind of thing. So while you're consolidating, you've got to consider how much they might grow in a single building. The con against the PK8 is and kitchen with separate serving lines. Then you got to consider, do you manage it with schedule? Because you've got so many different grade levels, you would have more lunch periods. You could have a larger cafeteria and maybe you separate it with an operable wall to maintain that separation, but your kitchen has to have 2 sets of serving lines, one to serve each side. So there's a lot of organizational things that need to be considered. Another consideration is a larger media center. You can have 2 media centers in the same building, one to serve elementary, one to serve middle, or you can combine it. But if you combine it, it's got to be larger because you've got the elementary grade media that you need to provide as well as the middle school level media. And then do you separate that in some fashion? There are ways you can handle it with scheduling. But if you say, you know, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are middle school and Tuesdays and Thursdays are for elementary, there may be times when one side needs to be in there for one reason or another, and now you've got a little bit of a conflict. So there's some administrative things that could come into play there. You definitely would need 2 gymnasiums. I think Florence Bowser has the 1 gymnasium, right? But you would need 2 because you're going to have an elementary-sized gym. Typically, it's a slightly smaller court. You don't have areas around the court for bleacher seating, any spectators. You may want that on the middle school side. Middle school also needs to have locker rooms. So now you're duplicating gymnasium space in the same building. And again, it's doable. It takes thought and planning to make it work organizationally, but it's special considerations that you guys should not overlook. Separate guidance. Do you want your first or second graders going to the same guidance counselor's office as your middle schoolers? And then certainly a clinic. You may want 2 clinics. I don't think you want a first grader in with a 7th or 8th grader in the same clinic. So there's consideration there. Some spaces I think you can make larger and divide them in certain ways. Others I think you still need to replicate and have 1 each on either side of the house. Grade separation challenges. Let's say you have a bubble 1 year. You've got a big influx of students enrolling, and all of a sudden your second grade is a little bit larger. In an elementary or even in a middle school setting, it's easier to handle that bubble class coming through. You just shift the use of a classroom as they move through the school, right? That's a little more difficult in a PK8 because you can't shift that bubble to the other side of the house and make that work. Not to mention, class sizes are different from elementary to middle school. So you would have a challenge there dealing with a bubble or an influx of students in any particular year. Does that make sense? There's the potential for duplication of similar special education spaces. So as a student gets older and they need to move up, if they're in an elementary school, they can continue to use that same special education space. But when they go into middle school, you would have to replicate that space on that side of the house. I don't know that you would want an 8th grade special ed student on the elementary side. So you got to consider where you need to duplicate space. One of the pros for a K-8 is schools can foster a strong sense of community and continuity because they remain in the same building for a longer period. The con against that is students miss the experience of transitioning that can help them adapt to new environments and prepare them for high school. So they're missing that opportunity to kind of graduate from the elementary building and go to the middle school building. They're still there in the same place. PK8 schools often struggle to provide specialized resources and facilities such as advanced science labs or electives when you're in a PK8 setting. It's doable, but it's going to increase square footage on the middle school side tremendously. Security challenges for after hours. There's more after school activity on the middle school side than on elementary, I would say. So unless there's strict separation, are you opening up the elementary side to those middle schoolers that are remaining after school for whatever those activities might be? So there's consideration there. And then I would say overall, there's a slight cost savings to construct a single facility with separate elementary and middle schools as opposed to building separate. So, it's a small savings, but is it worth the other things that you got to factor in and decide, is it worth doing? So, because if you take your average size elementary school and your average size middle school, you take that total square footage for both and then you combine them, you can probably reduce it by about 10% on those spaces that you're not replicating, like 2 kitchens. You got one, but it's bigger. Same thing media center-wise, mechanical space. So there's a 10% reduction. At the end of the day, that is it's a more expensive building in one shot than separating between the elementary and the middle.
Thank you so much. While you was reading that, the first school that came to mind was in Smithfield, which I work in several, but one is the high school and the middle school. I don't know if you all built that or not, but they're
Windsor?
connected in
Not
Smithfield.
Okay.
And so they have the high school on one side,
Yes.
the middle on the other. It's connected. They have their own gym, cafeteria, everything. They have their own admin each, but it is connected. So I was just trying to picture that as you were talking, and it works. So I'm just relating that to how you were describing it, and just to see where we could put a school like that. Because everything you said, it's like, okay, yeah, they have different gym in each one. They have the auditorium and all. And so, I was doing my drawing myself. So, I may do some contracting with you all so you can see my design, but how this will work. But thank you so much for that. And it's a lot to think about.
Sure.
Because you're elementary to middle, instead of middle to high. But it works. I know it can work.
We do work with Isle of Wight as well. I will tell you that the high school has kind of bled into the middle school, at least for one of the wings on one of the floors.
Right. Because I think it's one auditorium, though.
That's correct.
Right.
One of them.
Huge, one auditorium. And you go like through the hallways and boom, you're in the high school and you
Yes.
come out. So, yeah. Thank you so much. You spend a lot of time doing that, and we appreciate it. We appreciate the time that you've taken to present to us. Does anyone else have any?
Yes. Madam Chair, I actually had the opportunity to teach at a pre-K 8 school, and that's why I suggested it at the joint meeting, because if we look to our neighbors, I think we don't have to look no further than Hampton. Hampton has the blueprint. Phoenix is a pre-K 8. Hunter B. Andrews is a pre-K 8. The way it's done, the way it's set up, the library, really not bigger than this room, but it's divided by the bookshelves, and you have a librarian for this side and a librarian for that side. It works, and they're still able to provide those specialty programs versus not being able to provide. I think whatever we build, if we build it with the programs in mind, it should be able to function. I think it would be an ideal cost saving. Is it ideal for some? No. And I did my research as I was talking. The behavior, and from teaching there, it's not really much different because these are kids who have interactions anyway in their communities. Middle school is age 12. So those children and elementary kids often have brothers. And one thing I would watch and observe while working at a pre-K 8 school was seeing the big bad 7th grader walk his pre-K brother to the classroom, dap him up, hug him, and then go to his class. The way it's designed there is all administrators are not in the main office. You have a lead administrator and 3 assistant principals. 1 principal service the middle, 1 principal service elementary, and 1 assist in areas of need. But it's definitely more efficient, it's more economical. Being a former bus driver for 11 years, it is ideal because now it's less routing. So I think the operational cost would be a savings in addition to building 1 facility versus trying to build 2 separate ones, acquire 2 separate land for it. So I would suggest, Madam Chair, that the board do a field trip and we go to Hampton and take a look before we say we want to do this or spend more resources and energy on it. Go see one in operation. We can look at Phoenix and then go probably to the one in Smithfield and see how that is operating. So when we come back, we'll have an idea of what can be done. And I think it's paramount that the board, along with Dr. Gordon and his staff, go see it, because that way we know exactly from a board perspective, because we got to talk to our constituents about it, how to present it. But if we've never been to one, you can't advocate for it. So I think it's a worthwhile investment. It's moving smart. It's a great overall idea.
Thank you. Anyone else before we? Dr. Gordon?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. We want to transition the board to the handout that you had at your seats that showed the estimated cost of $2020 versus $2024. The other attachment that you have in ESB is the executive summary from the facility study that was done in 2021. So that was requested by the board just to have on record for review. I didn't ask Mr. Probst or Mr. Harris to be able to go over that word for word, because as you all know, there's a lot of pages there. But I did ask them to take a look and to be able to kind of talk about really the changing costs for the different categories that I had discussed when I was teeing this up for our elementary, middle schools, and high schools, and combined schools based on some of the discussions that Mr. Riddick had just brought up. So, Mr. Harris, Mr. Probst, if you want to talk a little bit about just the change in 2020 versus 2024, and include the variance, any soft costs or things that you're seeing with construction projects that are occurring right now.
Well, first of all, everyone's aware of the inflation costs that we've seen over the last 4 years. We had an unprecedented, was it 18% in 21? 21, yes. And we haven't really seen that come down much. We've had more normal inflation the other years, in 20 and 22 and 23. So those costs have really driven construction up nationwide, and certainly we've seen it in our area as well. So we went back and looked at average construction costs on Virginia's Department of Education website for year 22 and 23, and 23 and 24. We have actually seen a couple of projects that bid this year that were a little bit lower than was anticipated. So what we did was took the average cost per square foot in 22, 23, and the average cost per square foot 23, 24, and we kind of averaged them together, kind of give us a middle-of-the-road type number. And we did that per type of school. We did the same for elementary, we did them for middle, and we did it for high schools. So then we took that average cost and put it in the correct column related to whether it's an elementary addition, a new elementary school, a middle school addition, or a new middle school, or high school addition, or a new high school. And we updated the total project cost based on those average numbers over the previous 2 years. And if you look at the sheet that's in front of you that shows the variance, you can see the impact on each and every project that was listed in the study. When you get down to the bottom line, you can see an eye-popping number of, was that 300,000? 300 million, sorry, $300 million. We know during tough times when budgets are hard to come by and getting the money you need is difficult, this doesn't make it any easier. But it's the world we live in, and we're not happy about it. I know you guys aren't happy about it, but these are real numbers. Makes it difficult to plan, for sure. So do you have any specific questions about what's in front of you?
Anyone have any questions? Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. Mr. Napier will be your point of contact if we get some additional action items or things to discuss. Just as a reminder to the board, our RMM is the one that's actually doing our current design work for Northern Shores that we hope to have completed sometime in early 2025, as well as the work that was done to put in for our current building of JFK. Mr. Napier had sent me the current completion percentages. JFK is at 40% complete. The IT building, Mr. Littlefield is extremely happy. That's at 65%. That was the first part that they actually started. And the CCEP building is at 60%. So at this time, we are actually slightly ahead of schedule, but more importantly, we are under budget. So we hope to be able to continue that. But if there's any other items that we'll be able to bring forward, we'll make sure that we get with Mr. Probst and Mr. Harris. And definitely want to thank you gentlemen for being here today.
For having us.
Thank you so much. Hopefully traffic is not as bad going back as it was.
It's got to be
coming in.
better. It can't be worse.
Or just go to the Peanut Fest and just start
Thank
to do that.
Thank you.
Now we will have our resolution made to go into our closed session. Ms. Howell?
A motion is needed to go into a closed meeting to discuss the following items and subjects pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act found at Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. Number one, record review 24/25-5 RR regarding the assignment of a student to Turlington Woods School where the discussion in an open meeting would involve disclosure of the information contained in the student's scholastic record. And number two, record review 24/25-6 RR regarding the assignment of a student to Turlington Woods School where the discussion in an open meeting would involve disclosure of information contained in the student's scholastic record, which is authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act found at Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A2.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Please leave all of your devices that was not given to you by Suffolk Public Schools out here with the clerk. Thank you.
Jenkins.
Up and down, right?
So the vote was 7.
We don't vote yet. That's on the business part.
Business.
This is just affirming that we
That we
only
went.
talked about.
Okay.
So this is just a certification.
It sure was. Before I left home, it was these.
We now return back from our closed session. Board Member Howell?
A resolution of certification of the first closed meeting of October 10th, 2024 pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended. Whereas the school board of the City of Suffolk convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Suffolk hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this resolution of certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board of the City of Suffolk.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Recess.
Now we will go to recess until 7 o'clock. We will now open up our meeting, our public meeting, for any concerns or comments on our cell phone policy. If you wish to speak, there is a form in the back that you must fill out and present it to the clerk. Is there anyone here that's supposed to be speaking on the cell phone policy? Okay, we're moving on. Now we will open up our October Suffolk Public School meeting, board meeting. And we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mrs. Slingloff.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Now we will have a moment of silence, and we do want to recognize that we are representing or remembering Breast Cancer Month. And for those of you all who are survivors or have had someone to pass because of breast cancer, we are keeping you in your prayers as well. So, moment of silence, please. Thank you. Dr. Brittingham, will you please read our mission statement?
The missions of Suffolk Public Schools is to produce 21st century learners that will become productive citizens in society, foster a dynamic, safe, and nurturing learning environment, partner with school community for the benefit of students and staff, strengthen the school division by employing a highly qualified and diverse staff, effectively and efficiently managing capital and human resources, effectively communicate to increase community investment.
Thank you so much. Now we will have our action for our closed meeting.
Madam Chair, I move that we uphold the decision of the committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Clarification.
Oh.
Madam Chair, do you want to clarify that you're upholding decision for each one of the student review numbers 24/25-5 and 24/25-6? Do you want to take them collectively or individually, just so there's clarification for the public?
We can,
Madam Chair, I can amend my motion.
okay.
I move that we collectively uphold both decisions for 24/25-5 and 24/25-6.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second with a revision of the motion. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slingloff.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Now we are moving to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda before us.
Second motion.
It's been properly moved in second. Is there any questions? We are ready to vote.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slingloff.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving right along, we have public speakers on agenda topics.
It is the intent of the school board to ensure that the affairs of the board be conducted in an open and orderly manner, that all persons desiring to address the board are afforded an opportunity to do so, in the order in which they sign up to speak, that persons in attendance may observe and hear the proceedings of the board without distraction, and that the members of the board and board employees are able to transact the business of the board with minimal disruption. Any persons addressing the board shall, 1, confine their comments to matters germane to services, policies, and affairs of the school board or Suffolk Public Schools. 2, refrain from words or statements which, from their usual construction and common acceptance, are construed as insult intended to incite violence or breach of the peace. 3, refrain from obscenity, vulgarity, or other breach of respect. 4, comply with the time limit for public comment as set by the board, which can be up to 5 minutes, unless the board, through the exercise of its discretion, decides to allow less than 5 minutes for public comment. 5, refrain from cumulative or repetitive remarks. And 6, refrain from making any comment regarding any pending student discipline or employee grievance matters. The appropriate forum for such matters is the applicable administrative hearing provided by state law or where appropriate court proceeding. Persons must not engage in disorderly, disruptive, or boisterous conduct such as, but not limited to, making noise, use of profane language or obscene gestures, yelling, or similar demonstrations that interrupts or disturbs the peace and good order of the meeting. Persons addressing the board may deliver to the board or its clerk written materials including reports, statements, exhibits, letters, or signed petitions, and may also make use of any chart or graph during their verbal presentation. The school board welcomes comments from the public as appropriate. Board members will listen to public comment but will not comment, deliberate, or take action on them. The school board chair may direct the superintendent to investigate items and report back to the school board at a subsequent meeting. The chair or other presiding officer shall preserve decorum and shall decide all questions of public order subject to appeal to the board. At the request of the chair, a city police officer shall act as sergeant-at-arms at tonight's board meeting. The officer shall, under the direction of the chair or other presiding officer, have charge of the meeting area, the waiting areas, and corridors adjacent thereto, and shall prevent disorder or interruption of the business of the board. Our first speaker is Dr. Deborah Wallstrom, and she'll be speaking regarding purchase cards and cell phones.
I do have a handout for you tonight, if I may share that. It's okay to wait till everybody gets that, Chairman. Thank you so much. Good evening, board members. Tonight I am here to talk about cell phones, and yesterday I thought it might be good to try to help clarify some things that I've been hearing myself. And so I put together just a little piece called What SPS School Handbooks Say About Cell Phones in Schools. So the first page has our specialty schools, has College and Career Academy, Turlington Woods, and then our SPS policy. So as you're looking at this, in column 1, you'll always see the school name. In column 2, you will see information about whether cell phones are even referenced in the handbook. In column 4, you'll see the actual page number, so you can go back and check that if you would like. And then on column 4, you're going to see something that I just called the rules, because the rules are in the handbooks for students. And there are actually 5 categories I found if you look under the rules terms there. Yes, no, yes, but, yes, if, and no, but. So one of the things I did find as I looked through this was that there was not one category that all the schools fit in, as you might expect for handbooks throughout the school division. Okay, if you go to page number 2, this provides information for you by elementary and middle and high school. And again, it's the same information that's on the first page. It's just broken out by elementary, middle, and high, because it's always good to look at information that way. On page number 3, you'll see a summary statement, summary page. And you'll see the 5 categories that I just mentioned that I sorted the schools into. And my question that I wanted to answer was, are cell phone rules consistent from one school to the next? And what I found out that you can tell by just the categories is, no, they're not really consistent from one school to the next. Even though we might think that they should be, they are not. So in the yes column, you'll see our friends at Kings Fork High and Lakeland and Nansemond River, and our SPS policy, of course. I did include that, so you can also look at things in comparison to the policy. So there are 4 schools in the yes column. And if you have a policy that says you can bring cell phones to school, you would expect all of them to be in the yes. In the no column, you'll see Hill Point, Nansemond Park, Colonel Fred Cherry Middle, and Turlington Woods. It's very clear from their handbooks that no, you will not be bringing a cell phone to school. And one of the schools, and I wish I could remember it off the top of my head, put no, we're going to follow the new law comes out, the executive order number 33. Thought that was very, very good to put into their policy. Now, the yes, but column, the largest column on here with 9 schools, is where it's like, yes, you can bring it, but if you bring it, you can't really hold on to it. But, there's a little wishy-washy there about what you can actually do with the cell phone once you bring it to school. And you'll see that this has elementary schools, it has middle schools, and it has the College and Career Academy. So on this one, you have Booker T, Creekside, Elephants Fork, Northern Shores, Southwestern, John Kennedy Middle, John Yates Middle, Kings Fork Middle, and the College and Career Academy. So I've just called those kind of squishy when you read them, what they're actually telling us. And then the yes if, and the yes if means, well, yes, you can bring it, but you have to put it away somewhere, or you'll be in big trouble. You have to put it in a locker. You have to have it somewhere if you bring it in. And this one, the yes if also says you have to have your parents say that you can bring a phone. So if you want to bring a phone, the parents have to sign off on bringing a phone to school. And in that category, you have Mac Ben, Florence Bowser, Kilby Shores, and Oakland. And then the no but the column, you've got Forest Glen Middle. I really appreciate you taking the time to gather input on the phone policy, because I know my time's up. I'm sorry. You'll see a more detailed version behind it as well. It might be useful to you.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm going to call to the podium Ms. Antoinette Dickens to do our reports by the superintendent, Good News Report. She's going to highlight students from VSU that came to visit Nansemond River High School, Kings Fork Middle School hosting the Virginia Children's Engineering STEM Institute. One of our students that's in the Boy Scouts of America building an outdoor classroom at John Yates. Our local choice awards for Best Principal and Best Teacher. Highlights from our bands and the classic Nansemond River High School Warrior Classic Band Day competition. And also Kings Fork High School receiving outstanding honors at the Hopewell High School Wonder City Classic. And then I will close it out with the calendar of special events. Ms. Dickens?
Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, school board members, and those here with us this evening. Last month, Virginia State University College of Engineering students took a tour of Nansemond River High School as a part of their S3 tour to Suffolk, Sussex, and Southampton. Members of our leadership team shared our school division's mission, vision, and philosophy in hopes of motivating future educators to apply to Suffolk Public Schools following their graduation. We want to especially shout out Mr. Nick Wright, our former Rookie Teacher of the Year from Nansemond River. If you've ever heard him speak, you know that your ears were in for a treat, right? Because he is an exceptional motivational speaker, and we're so fortunate to have him and the energy that he brings to Suffolk. We know that he has lit a fire in some of those students who came to visit us last month, and we expect to see them back here wanting to teach in Suffolk. And I can tell you that when they are ready to come back, Dr. Avery's team will be waiting for them at the door. Some of you were able to attend this event. It was a positively unique experience and a creative way to give those students a glimpse into their future careers here with Suffolk Public Schools, and we do look forward to seeing them come back. The Virginia Children's Engineering STEM Institute took place on September 21st. It was an engaging event aimed at inspiring and equipping pre-K to middle school teachers and students with innovative strategies in STEM education. And our keynote speaker was none other than our esteemed superintendent, Dr. John B. Gordon III. The Institute offered hands-on engineering challenges, creative problem solving, of STEM across the curriculum aligned with the Virginia Standards of Learning. Those who attended gained valuable insights and tools to nurture a love for STEM in young learners. Charles Falkenstein, a student at Nansemond River High School and an active member of the Boy Scouts of America Troop 16, has accomplished the outstanding task of building an outdoor classroom at John Yates Middle School as a part of his Eagle Scout project. This space, or this innovative space, is designed to provide students with a unique and engaging environment for learning, as well as for building a deeper appreciation for the outdoors. Mr. Falkenstein's commitment, leadership, and hard work are truly commendable. His project not only enhances the educational experience for current students, but also sets a lasting legacy for future Chargers. We are incredibly proud to highlight the multi-talented nature of our students and celebrate his significant achievement. A special thank you also goes to our community partners, Blair Brothers and Lowe's, who generously donated the materials for this project. Two of our very own recently received the annual Suffolk News Herald's Locals' Choice Awards. Congratulations to Kings Fork High School Principal, Mr. Derek Bryan, and outstanding teacher at Hill Point Elementary School, Ms. Megan Faraba. This well-deserved recognition highlights the positive impact that they both make in their schools and the broader educational community. We are incredibly proud to celebrate their achievements and look forward to witnessing their continued success and contributions to education. The Nansemond River High School Warrior cheerleaders have much to celebrate as they proudly secured second place at the Universal Cheer Association's Invitational held at Deep Run High School. This accomplishment is a testament to the team's dedication, training, and exceptional talent. You can only imagine how many countless hours the cheerleaders spent perfecting their routines and mastering complex stunts. This achievement not only highlights the students' commitment to excellence in extracurricular activities, but also it showcases the supporting environment and strong community backing that empowers our athletes to thrive. We congratulate each member of the cheerleading squad and their coaches for their hard work and outstanding performance. We also congratulate the Lakeland High School Marching Band Quiet Storm for their achievements at the 33rd Annual Nansemond River High School Warrior Classic Band Competition Day. The band proudly earned first place for their majorettes and percussion, second place overall band, and third place for their dancers and drum major. Kings Fork High School participated in the Hopewell High School Wonder City Classic Marching Band Competition and received second place for their percussion and first place for their overall band, flag, dance teams, drum major, and open class majorette. Overall, we're exceptionally proud of all of our Suffolk bands for their exceptional performance at this year's Peanut Fest Parade. Lakeland High School received third place, Kings Fork High School earned second place, and Nansemond River High School Marching Band proudly took home first place. For our students, marching band is more than just music. It brings energy, pride, unity in our schools. It brings our community together and entices our entire city of Suffolk. Like many of you on the board, or even our former board member, who's here as well, understand that these programs foster creativity, leadership, discipline, and they do play a vital role in developing well-rounded students. So we are very proud of these programs and our students who continue to benefit from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gordon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dickens. Great things going on with the STEM Institute, once again showing why Suffolk is actually one of the national leaders when it comes to STEM education. And I can say when we had the visitors from Virginia State that came, it was part of the 3S visit with us, Sussex, and Southampton. And Dr. Avery has already received several communications from several future teachers that are basically choosing Suffolk over those other two school divisions. So we are really excited about that. And to Ms. Dickens' point, the communication that came from our teacher mentor as well as Mr. Wright as our Rookie Teacher of the Year was outstanding. Before I get into the calendar of special events, I had dropped a hint to the board last month about a recent grant that we were awarded and are a part of. The Tidewater Education Consortium was awarded $8.9 million to address teacher shortages and leadership capacity within the rural and high-need school districts of Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, and Suffolk. Isle of Wight is going to be the fiscal agent, while Portsmouth and Suffolk will get the responsible appropriations of approximately $3 million each. The program will develop teacher and leadership capacity in these regions through partnerships with Norfolk State University and the University of Maryland, College Park, with a special thank you to Dr. Shedley for helping to be the facilitator of that. Our point person on this grant was our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Akima Branch. The primary objectives are to improve teaching and leadership quality, to address teacher shortages, to provide professional development, including mentorship and coaching to aspire teachers and leaders to enhance their leadership and instructional skills, and to promote equity, to align efforts with the strategic plans of partner districts to ensure diverse student populations receive equitable access to high-quality education. One of the things that we're really taking a hard look at is not only support for teachers that need to pass the practice, but to expand our mentoring and coaching program, tuition reimbursement, and we also had some preliminary conversations with partnering with the University of Maryland College Park to start a doctoral candidate program at a significant reduced rate. So Dr. Branch, I want to thank you for all of your hard work with that. We had our secondary meeting with Dr. Kramer, Dr. Bracey's team is that we're in Portsmouth. I wanted to bring this to the board's attention because you will see a press release and information coming out as we have a photo shoot coming up at Norfolk State University within the next week or so. For the calendar of special events, as you all can see that we are all wearing pink today, so I'm going to get to that in a second. As a reminder that October is Disability Awareness Month, Bullying Prevention, Principals Appreciation Month, Arts and Humanities, Breast Cancer Awareness, Cybersecurity Awareness, National Fire Prevention Week was October 6th to the 12th. Today is the Pink Out Day. Thank you to all of our SAO members that did our loop through downtown. We have a great sign and pictures that we had on all of our social media. It was all about early detection, saving lives. I want to thank all of our SAO members for participating in the walk. October 15th is Indigenous Peoples Day. Unity Day, also known as Bullying Prevention Awareness, is October 16th. Same day as National Boss Appreciation Day. National School Bus Safety Week is October 21st through the 25th. The end of the marking period is in 19 days. End of first grading period for 45 total days is October 29th. The next day, October 30th, is the beginning of the second 9 weeks. November, as we look forward and look ahead, is Native American Heritage Month. Daylight savings time, where we fall back, will be November 3rd. As a reminder, Election Day is November 5th. It's a virtual clerical day for teachers, no school for students. As you all know, many of our schools are set up as election sites. We always want to remind all of our constituents in the city of Suffolk to please go out and vote for the candidates that support public schools. Veterans Day holiday is November 11th, where the division is closed. That's also the beginning of Anti-Bullying Week, November 11th through the 17th. We will have our annual VSBA Take Your Legislator to School Month, Tuesday, November 12th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Kilby Shores Elementary School. This is, as we've always went in order of the next school that was on our capital improvement plan, which is part of the reason why Kilby Shores Elementary School was chosen this year. World Kindness Day is November 13th. We have Parent-Teacher Conference, which will be an early release for students, and report cards will be distributed on November 14th. We do that, Suffolk community, on purpose to make sure that our parents have had an opportunity to review the report card. I know they're keeping up with the grades in HAC, but this way they can come in and we can have some suggestions for support based on information, instructional data from the first 9 weeks. And that's also the same day of our next school board meeting, Madam Chair, which will be on November 14th.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please take note to all the information that was given. And thank you so much for your report, Ms. Dickens. Now we will have the consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Madam Chair, I request that in that approval that we remove the bills and payroll and put it into new business.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would also like to request that we pull out the minutes from September 12th's meeting for a minor change. Please?
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda, removing items 2 and 19 for corrections, for whatever, for questions.
Okay. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slingla.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Dr. Gordon?
Yes, Madam Chair, as a part of our personnel report, we want to take the time to introduce our new Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Caitlin Leitner. Dr. Leitner received her Bachelor of Science from Radford University, her Master of Education from Avery University. She, 2 years ago, got her Doctor of Education from Liberty University in Educational Leadership. She's actually been with Suffolk Public Schools since 2014, where she started as a teacher at Pioneers, now Southwestern Elementary School. She was also a science specialist from 2018-2020. And as of today and this announcement, she's currently been serving as our coordinator of science. Dr. Leitner will officially take over as our new Director of Curriculum Instruction on Monday. Dr. Leitner, we want to give you an opportunity to address the board and introduce any family members that you may have here in attendance.
Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair, Vice Chair, Dr. Gordon, School Board, and guests. I'm honored to stand before you today as I accept the position of the Director of Curriculum Instruction for Suffolk Public Schools. This moment fills me with a deep sense of humility and gratitude. I want to express my sincere appreciation and trust that you've placed in me. With me tonight is my mother, Terry McIntosh, a role model of a leader I aspire to become. I'm deeply thankful for her support, which has inspired me throughout my journey. Thank you. As I embark on this new chapter, I'm driven by a passion for advancing educational excellence in our district. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our current curriculum and instruction team. Their dedication, expertise, hard work have laid a strong foundation that I'm eager to build upon. Together, we can enhance our curriculum, promote innovative teaching practices, and ensure that every student has an equitable access to quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
We're moving to unfinished business. Now we will move to our unfinished business. Do we have the report this time for the School Board Self-Evaluation Committee?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there is no report available at this parent time from the Evaluation Committee. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October the 22nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. Location is still pending as far as verification of availability. We wanted to ensure that we did our due diligence to search near and far to see what tools and instruments other divisions are using. I'm personally waiting on some response from my contacts with other school boards who are members of COSPA to see what they're using. We only received 2 instruments thus far. One was from Portsmouth Public Schools, and the other one, I can't remember who's that from, but it's the VSBA model. So we just want to make sure we have a thorough, well-thought-out presentation when we submit back to the board for adoption and consideration.
I just have a question. Have we looked at the VSBA model? So you're going to compare that to?
We have.
Okay.
We have looked at the VSBA model. We also looked at the instrument that the City of Portsmouth Public Schools use. And we just want to make sure that it's a fair yet effective self-evaluation instrument.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, the Citizen Advisory Committee approval, that's an action item.
Madam Chair, as a part of the Citizen Advisory Committee approval will also to include finalization of all committees with any staff that need to serve on the committees. I'm going to ask Ms. Gardner if you can do a reminder to the board on the total number of individuals that can serve on specific committees based on what's currently in policy or what potentially is in the Code of Virginia, just so the board is reminded of that. And then to take a look, I believe you attached the final names.
I'll go through each committee. The Gifted Education Advisory Committee is to be comprised of no more than 20 members and will consist of parents, teachers, and administrators. All of this information is entailed in our policy. The School Health Advisory Board, SHAB, also is comprised of 20 members, and it includes parents, students, health professionals, educators, and others. The School Safety Audit Committee is comprised of 20 members, and it includes representatives of parents, teachers, local law enforcement agencies, judicial and public safety personnel, and the community at large. The Parent Advisory Council is comprised of no more than 22 members, and it should include parents, teachers, and administrators. The Local Advisory Committee for Special Education, also formerly known as SEAC, there is no cap on the members who can be on that committee. The Career and Technical Education Advisory Council is to be composed of 20 members, and it should include students, teachers, parents, and representatives from businesses, industry, and labor, and should not have more than 20 members. Did you need me to read the names of everyone that's to be approved? It's in the list on ESB. Okay. That's all of the committees.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we go ahead and move to approve these persons.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second.
I just have one minor question.
Yes.
On the SEAC committee, there's a space that's listed TBD, to be determined. Is there a particular person that we're waiting for that vacancy, or is that just an empty spot?
They have not determined who's going to fill that spot yet.
Okay, so it's a vacancy currently.
Is that correct, Mrs. Gardner? It's a vacancy?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question. That is a staff vacancy. So that's going to be filled at some point? Or is it just vacant and we'll try again next year?
It can be filled by staff. I think Dr. McNair and the team were waiting to see if there were any other staff members that were interested. We also wanted to make sure that we didn't go over the maximum number. So I'll leave it up to Dr. McNair, but usually because the board is voting on these names now, this is going to be the final vote, so more than likely that will not be filled.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
being that there are no limits to how many individuals can sit on the SEAC committee, if the school division were to add a seat here, would it be fair to say that the citizens would also be allowed to do something similar if that were to happen?
I think we are leaving it up to the staff at this point because we've had our opportunity a long time to put who we wanted to put on the committees.
In addition to that, everyone who applied was appointed to those committees.
Right. Thank you. So are we ready to vote? Thank you.
Board members, please vote. Board member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board member Dr. Brooks-Buck.
Yes.
Board member Byram.
Yes.
Board member Riddick.
Yes.
Board member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Number 3, ordinance 2024-25-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Article 6, Section 4-6, entitled Statement of Policy, Contractual Authority of School Superintendent, Contracts Not Requiring Sealed Bids or a Competitive Negotiation of the Policies of the Suffolk Public Schools, School Board, second reading.
Move to approve.
Madam Chair.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Do we have any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So I would like to say a couple quick things about this policy. Last month, I think I had some misunderstandings about this policy. I don't think I'm the only one from the board that had some misunderstandings. I'd like to clarify them a little bit tonight before we go further. I did listen to the discussion again today that we had last month, and it's apparent to me that across the board there was some confusion on this policy. So I want to make a couple statements so the public can hear as well as my colleagues. There's a few things about this policy that I have learned going back and rereading the policy in its entirety, not just the changes, also going back and rereading Virginia Code. A couple of those things is, number one, this policy does not impact the superintendent's ability to spend money. It doesn't impact, he can still spend the money. It's not limiting his ability to spend money. Number two, it does not have anything to do with board oversight and the board relinquishing fiscal oversight or fiscal obligations from our care to the administration. It has nothing to do with it. There's nothing in this policy that states the board is relinquishing anything over. Number three, it does impact the process of procurement by increasing the threshold for informal procurement processes, which would be the small purchasing procedures, potentially decreasing the length of time it takes for purchasing products and services. Number four, as stated by the superintendent and also when I spoke with our attorney this week, It directly relates to small purchasing procedures and not emergency purchase provisions. It has nothing to do with emergency purchasing provisions, but there's a different procurement process. I learned actually today there's a different procurement process that allows for exceptions for emergencies. So these are some things, and I bring this out because going into the last meeting, my instinct, having done the prep that I did prior to that one, was not favorable for that policy. So my thought process was, I want to understand if this is something that we are going to approve, then I want to understand the need for it. So hence, as a board, we voted to receive a report showing the expenditures that have been made above $100,000 so that we could look at where this policy created issues for our purchasing department. So having said all of that, I did spend some time, like I said, speaking with the attorney about this policy. We spoke at length and we discussed some of the processes to make sure my understanding was correct, but we also looked at the verbiage of the policy because I had some questions regarding the way our policy was worded in comparison to Virginia code. And he mentioned to me that the policy that was presented before us was a policy that was worded by VSBA. So he agreed, and he's not here tonight, but he understood where I was coming from, and so he recommended that I could refer it back to the Policy Review Committee so that they could look at the wording as compared to the Virginia Code wording. That was number one. Number two, additionally, we discussed board oversight. By increasing this threshold, it means that the purchasing department could purchase up to $300,000 worth for any aggregate spending for something, a purchase, up to $300,000. And it would not have to go through the formal bidding processes, which is the invitation to bid and also the RFP or the RFP process. It would be an informal process. And so I inquired of him and asked if it was reasonable that the board would have some sort of report on a monthly basis as to what purchases were made in the month prior that were done through this informal process because of, this, up to this threshold. And he felt that was also reasonable. So one of the ways that could happen would be even just taking our monthly bills and payroll and having some sort of highlighting or addition or whatever is easiest for the staff to just note this purchase was made under informal processes, meaning it did not go through the invitation to bid and it did not go through the request for proposal. It was through the small purchasing processes. So my request tonight would be that we send this policy back to the Policy Review Committee in order to compare the language in the policy to that of the Virginia Code and to add language to include a monthly reporting system which will inform the board of all purchases made using the informal small purchasing procedure during the previous month. So I don't know if we can amend that. This will also allow for time for the superintendent. Last month at our meeting, the board voted to receive a report laying out all purchases over $100,000. Truly, it really just needs to be all purchases between $100,000 and $300,000 so we can see the items that would fall into this range. The board, in order to, not only would we send this back to the Policy Review Committee, but during that time it would afford the superintendent a little more time for his staff to complete that report to get it to the board before we actually vote on this policy.
Thank you. Any more questions? Or concerns?
Madam Chair, I agree with the suggestion that Board Member Slingloff has made. I would encourage her to make a motion.
Can't make a motion. There's a motion on the floor that's been seconded.
I have a question, though.
I do as well. But go ahead.
So my question is, so the report that we get every month, the financial report, anything that's purchased, is it not on that report?
Yes.
Right, correct? But you want these to be pulled out to,
The last month, are we referring to the request that was made by the board last month? Or are we referring to what? No. it can be the same report, but what I would like to see is that the purchases that are made without the invitation to bid or the RFP that are done through the, this small purchasing procedure process, that they're highlighted so that as you see the purchases that are made each month, it doesn't have to be a separate report. It can be in the actual bills and payroll, something that denotes which items were purchased during that month under that procedure instead of the request for proposal or the invitation to bid.
Okay. Dr. Buck?
Madam Chair, I think the attorney, and I know that we've addressed this issue. I don't know that he recommended it. He said he could do some things. I didn't get that from what I read. I've seen this, and I don't know. I know that when Mrs. Forsman spoke to this before, she talked about the additional work that it would have to go through all the purchases to highlight whatever you had to do and all the pages the staff would have to go through. I would like to know, actually, well, I wouldn't like to know. Let me stop there. I don't need to know what we're looking for, because I think we're looking for something, and this is what I think, not that it's so, but it's what I think. I think we're looking for something that's not there. My problem is that we have already understood, because Mrs. Forsman stood before us and explained, Dr. Gordon shared with us last time, that we had air conditioning to break down just before school started. We had some other things to do. So it's been explained and explained and explained. I don't know what we're looking for, but whatever it is we're looking for is not there. We haven't done anything that isn't supposed to be done, and it's causing extra work for people, in my opinion, that is unnecessary because it's not going to prove a point that's not provable because it's not so. So I don't know what our point is in doing this, but or because VSBA wrote it, or because of whatever. Because what I got from what I saw Mr. Waller write was that it was included, the things that are necessary are included in what we have written. So rewriting it and relooking at it, we can look at it, but it's not going to change what is there. The bottom line is it gives the authority to do this up to $300,000 by the superintendent in an emergency. If it's not an emergency, then it won't be done, and we can always have the opportunity to question it. We have reams of paper in here with all the purchases we have. If anyone can't find what they want in these reams of paper, because they go over and over, people from the audience who are invited to come and people from up here, over and over and over, we have found nothing. In the 6 years that I've been here, we have found nothing that's inappropriate. And so to go over this and over this and over this is not going to work. It's not going to work, and it's causing extra work for people that is unnecessary, in my opinion, and I have a right to that opinion. Madam Chair, I'm done with this. There's a motion on the floor, and I think we just need to vote on it.
Madam Chair.
Did you have something you had to say?
Yes. Okay, so I feel like we have kind of like two things here proposed and discussed. The report that we already voted on last month and affirmed by the will of the board that we were supposed to get with the purchases between $100,000 and $300,000 for 5 years. Yes. And then there's the mention of the report to come, Kim's request that it comes monthly or is denoted somehow in the report we already get. So I feel like we have to untangle that first to vote. I personally don't, as Kim has already said, this is a matter of process and procedure, not who or what is doing it. So I personally don't have a problem with this ordinance, as I think Board Member Slingloff was moving towards, but there has been a report already requested last month. And then I think it takes some feedback personally from Ms. Forsman, if there's even an ability without producing another report to denote on the current report which ones have followed through the informal process versus RFP and IFB.
Madam Chair, may I address it? Thank you for that. there are two things here really truly going on. If I had approached this tonight, following up on last month's, my approach tonight would have been to again table this policy till next month, because we had voted last month to table it until we received a report from the superintendent showing expenditures during the duration of his tenure over $100,000. We have not received that report. We have not received that report. I requested that report again when I saw the agenda come through on Thursday night. I emailed both you and Vice Chair Howell. I followed up on Friday again, and after following up with Ms. Gardner to see if that report had been received, it was not included. You followed up on Monday to tell me that you would check with the superintendent, and I didn't hear anything further after that. We did receive a memo with a few items that were discussed on it as evidence of hardship or delay from this policy, but one of those 4 items that were mentioned in there fell in the threshold of the $100,000 to $300,000 range, which would have been prohibitive for the process to go through the small purchasing process. The other 2 were over $1 million, so it had nothing to do with this policy that we're looking at, which limits it, which gives freedom up to $300,000 and limits it above that. It had nothing to do with this new threshold that would be opening. So there's only one that applied to it. So if we look at last month, the will of the board was that we would table this until we received the report, including the expenditures that were over $100,000 during the tenure of the superintendent. He stated from the dais last month that he would be able to provide the report, no problem. 2 weeks later, in an email, he indicated that Mrs. Forsman and her team were working on that report and that they were expending great time and effort to complete that report, but the report hasn't come yet. So again, the reason why I threw in sending it back to policy review for the 2 items that I've discussed after speaking with the attorney is the fact that if I table it tonight for that report, then next month there's going to be another delay sending it back to policy review if the board wills to make some additional changes to it. So in an effort to expedite this process, we can send it to Policy Review Committee and give another additional month to get the report that was requested by the will of the board last month and has not been received.
Madam Chair. May we ask how long it would take to go over 5 years? 5 years, 3 of which you weren't on the board, 5 years of reports to find out when decisions were made to get, I just want to know how long it would take in order to respond to this request and how much work time it will take before we change any wording to the policy, because that will just be another reason to hold it up.
Well, what we found was when we went back 5 years, as we explained in the memo, that you get into COVID where there was a gazillion emergency purchases, so you really kind of have to toss out those years because almost everything was emergency purchase and had nothing to do with this. So I want to apologize because my understanding of what you were asking for last month was anything over 100,000 that was delayed
Yes.
or would have been delayed by this policy.
That's what you said.
If you start going into what's over $100,000 that we just purchased, I mean, there's like 20 items just even on this particular one, but there are things like electricity and food, and do you really want all that? I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to get to is, do we really, those are normal, everyday purchases of the department to feed kids and to provide electricity and to purchase gasoline for the tanks. And I mean, those items can be $100,000 at a time. So I think I need a little more clarification as to exactly what you're looking for. Most other purchases are either under cooperative language of a contract that's already been through the RFP process, or it has come to this board for approval before we do it. So I'm not sure what you're asking me to
Ms.
get.
Forsman, yeah, let me just add to this, because I really appreciate the summary that Ms. Slingluff gave at the beginning from her conversation with Mr. Waller. And one of the key things that she said was this had no hindrance on the board's purchasing authority, doesn't stop the superintendent from purchasing things in emergencies. As the memo stated that we have cooperatives, The 4 or 5 items that were listed on the memo were based on what we knew that we had to order that was delayed because we had to wait for the board meeting. That was the interpretation that Ms. Forsman and I had, which is the reason why it took so long, because she had to go through 59 months worth of stuff to see the 4 or 5 that were delayed. I guess my concern is if we are saying that this has nothing to do with board's purchasing authority, that if it doesn't prohibit the school division from purchasing things, if it's an emergency or if it's using the small purchase process, why is there a need for additional oversight? Like, that's the part that's really troubling for me. If we know, based on the information that was given in the memo, if we know that the language that is being used and the letter that Mr. Waller wrote today and the feedback that I gave you, Ms. Linglove, when you asked about small purchase procedures, if we know that we have to follow the procurement process, if we know that we have bills and payroll that shows everything that we purchase every month, this isn't Microsoft Excel. This comes straight from the financing program and allocation that Ms. Forsman does. There is no highlighting. This means that Ms. Forsman will have to go in once the report is then transferred into ESB and then go down the lines, find the ones that use this process and put an asterisk beside it. So this really means that we're asking for the budget and finance team, Ms. Forsman, Linda Bates, Ty Carr, all of them to do the same report twice. So I guess my biggest concern is if it's dealing with what the administration has to do, why is there a need to have more oversight if it's proven, like you stated, that the school division will still be able to purchase things, doesn't impact the school board's purchasing authority, since that was one of those false narratives that were out there? Why do we then have to go to an extra level? You know, we could send it back to the policy review committee, but we're going to be back in the same place. And my conversations that I've had with several board members is, since we're knowing that it really won't change anything, vote it up or vote it down. Because one of the things and conversations that I had with Ms. Howell today was I was trying to avoid exactly what's happening right now, where we're actually for Ms. Forsman's team to do the same report twice, where even though it doesn't look like that, or it's not supposed to sound like that the board doesn't trust the work that her team is doing or how we have to purchase things, that's what it's coming off like. And then the fact that we then have to highlight that we didn't use the traditional process for purchases. Letter F in the Virginia Procurement Code and what the follow-up email that Mr. Waller sent today shows that we don't always have to have everything word for word in policy if we're following the Virginia Procurement Act. That is what our policy is derived from. Now, to Dr. Brooks-Buck's point, the only reason this even came forward is because VSBA said the state increased their small purchasing amounts. The suggestion is made for all school divisions in the Commonwealth of Virginia to align their policy small purchasing amounts with the state's new threshold. That's it. I didn't ask for it. Y'all didn't ask for it. That's it. So, Madam Chair and whomever else in the Policy Review Committee or here at the dais, instead of sending this back, vote it up or vote it down so we can move forward. That's just my 2 cents.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
What Dr. Gordon just said from my conversation with Board Member Linglove is pretty much what she was trying to figure out in conversation. Maybe it's a confusion in the language that is being presented tonight, but from my conversation with her, it's a recommendation from VSBA. She's trying to figure out, do we need to do it or not? So from my conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, in the report that she asked for, she was just trying to see, is there a need for it? Like, has this had any type of impact on the way we've been operating before? So that's from my conversation. That's why I voted to table it, because she wanted to see that information to see, because if it's no need for it and we operating fine the old way, then why change what's not broke? So that's why she was asking for it. From my understanding, it's not a fishing expedition to catch anyone in something or to put a lot of work on you. It was just, okay, we get that it came from the VSBA, but is this necessary for us? So that's what she was asking.
If
Did
I
I
may
get it
make one
correct?
comment on this, the only thing that this really does affect, it doesn't affect anything we do. We're going to follow whatever rules you put in front of us. But what it does do is it kind of limits the local businesses, small businesses, from coming in. Because when we go out for a formal RFP or IFP, there's a process. They have to put a bunch of stuff together. They have to prove who's on their team. We see resumes for those. They've got to give us their insurance policies. They've got to do all these things, their business licenses, all these things, and put together a package and deliver it to us by a certain date or time. A lot of small businesses can't do that. A lot of local businesses don't have the staff to do that and can't do that. So the only thing that this policy is going to change at all, from my perspective, is that we will not have to go out for formal bid for those smaller projects, like the sinks and all that we've just done for a little over $100,000 at the 2 high schools. We wouldn't have to go out for RFP and hold that up for several months to get that RFP through the process. We could, through this informal process and this new threshold, accept just quotes from local businesses, which they're more easily able to do. That's literally the only thing that this policy, I believe, is going to do. And like I said, I'm with Dr. Gordon. Whatever you guys decide is fine. We'll follow whatever rules are put in front of us. But to me, that is literally the only thing that this policy does. And that's, I believe, what the committee that put this together at the state level was looking at, was that local businesses, smaller businesses, have a very difficult time putting these RFP packages together because they're very formal. And that this would be an opportunity to raise that threshold and allow them to do some of the smaller work, not the $1 million work, but some of the smaller work, without having to come up with all those formal documents. Now, I mean, and that's just from our perspective.
Thank you. And we're getting ready to, we need to go ahead and vote on this.
Madam Chair, I wanted to make one more comment. After pulling the Procurement Act and reading through that myself, the discussion that I had with Board Member Slingluff, and then looking at the wording that we have in our policy, the idea of it going back to the policy review would be to make sure that the wording we have here really strongly reflects this, not just the letter, but the spirit of what's written in here, because there are things written in our policy that seem to leave out some of what is said in the Procurement Act. So after having talked to Board Member Slingluff and read, I went through and read it myself, I agree. I do believe this needs to go back to policy review so that they can look at and maybe match the wording closer to what the Procurement Act actually says. Thank
Okay.
you.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Forsman, for your explanation. It definitely gave me a lot of clarity. This is me. Anyone who knows me knows I'm key for a small business, and that's why I was adamant trying to get a joint small business RFP, how it works, presentation from the school system. Because from my conversation with over 80 small businesses in the city of Suffolk, they just don't know how to do it. It's not that they don't have the manpower, but I tried that and that was, strongly rejected. My thing is, if this policy is to impact our local economy, me personally, I would like to see some language, and I wish, Attorney Waller was here so he can let me know if we could do it or not, but I would like to see some language that stipulates that. Because what I don't want to see is it's designed for the local economy, but then I still see big business being awarded it. So that's where my opposition comes in. Because if the spirit of the policy, if it is our desire to enhance small business, to stimulate our local economy, thus generating more tax dollars for us and our operating budget and our fiscal budget, then I would like to know that there is no gray areas where we can award to big business. So if the motion goes as it's slated now, I want to correct the narrative before falseness proceed. That is my reason for the way I vote. I want to make sure our small business is protected and able to get their fair share of the pie.
We're ready to vote.
Madam Chair,
We're going to vote now because we all had our turns and we need to follow the process. Will you reread the motion, please?
Board Member Byram moved, and Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck moved to approve ordinance 2024/25-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Article 6, Section 4-6.1, entitled Statement of Policy Contractual Authority of School Superintendent, Contracts Not Requiring Sealed Bids or Competitive Negotiations of the Policies of the Suffolk City School Board. Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
No.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
No.
Board Member Slinglove.
No.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Madam Chair, may I have a point of privilege?
Yes, go ahead.
I would just like to say one thing that I would like to see this board do differently is communication. Last month, the board voted on one thing. It was not followed through with by the administration. And this board just turned a blind eye to that and disregarded the fact that the board voted for something. Had it been a hardship for the staff, it should have been communicated with the board. We're all reasonable up here. But to simply deny the request that was voted on by the will of the board, to not provide what was requested by the will of the board, to disregard 3 different days of communication to find out where that report was, and to have the line mum is why having reports like this indicating specific details about processes should be included so that communication is better. This board, if we are to operate as a team with our staff, communication is key. This is not an aha. Every time I bring up something to ask a question or to consider processes, it's always assumed it's an aha to catch someone. It's not. This is about communication, about working as a team, about collaborating together. And this has been repeatedly, and tonight I'm most disheartened by the fact that this board did not stand by a request and a vote that the will of the board came to. It was disregarded by our staff and not fulfilled. And I think, how can you go forward executing anything if it can be disregarded when the board voted? And I'm actually a little ashamed that this is how we're going to operate.
Thank you. And it's my understanding that there was a report given, so.
Nope. I could speak to that report.
Okay, so we're going to move on. We're not going to go back and forth. Will you do that? Unfinished? The new business.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the VDOE authorization of signature in absence of Division Superintendent through June 30th, 2025.
Second the motion.
Been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote? Is there any discussion?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove. Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to approve a resolution 2024/25-9, a resolution for the City of Suffolk, Virginia, authorizing the granting of an easement to the City of Norfolk, Virginia, for the relocation of water mains on the property of Nansman Parkway Elementary School.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Are there any questions? Let's vote.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to approve ordinance 2024/25-48, an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Article 5, Section 5-5.2, entitled Adequate Nutrition Program Required, Free Breakfast and Lunch Programs, After-School Meal Program, Donations Accepted to Offset Any Meal Debt, Amendments to Policy of the Policies of the Suffolk City School Board, first reading and adoption.
Move to approve.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Madam Chair, I move to approve ordinance 2024/25-49, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Article 18, Section 8-18.5, entitled Parent Notification of Dual Enrollment Courses, etc., of the policies of the Suffolk City School Board, first reading and adoption.
Move to adopt.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Madam Chair, I move to approve ordinance 2024/25-50, an ordinance amending Chapter 9, Article 15, Section 9-15.4, entitled Reasonable Suspicion Requirements, Same-Sex Requirement, of the policies of the Suffolk City School Board, first reading and adoption.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Madam Chair, item number 6 through 27 are information only. I don't know if there's any questions or discussion at this time, but then there are 2 remaining action items, bills and payroll, and then a review of the minutes from September 12th.
So we pulled the number 2 out. Is there any discussion on that? Or you just want to vote on it? Number 2 and 19.
Consent agenda.
From the consent agenda.
Number 19, I would like to make a comment on. I think they're voted on separately.
Okay. So, number 2, is there any discussion on that one before we move to 19?
Madam Chair, I move to approve bills and payroll.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Any discussion? Okay.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
No.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slinglove.
No.
Vice Chair Howell.
Yes.
Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Number 19, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I just want to address a correction on the minutes.
Okay.
Ironically, it has to do with ordinance 2425-25, amending Chapter 4, Article 6, Section 4-6.1. In the minutes, it states, Board Member Slinglove moved and Board Member Dr. Brittingham seconded the motion to table the vote for ordinance 2425-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Article 6, Section 4-6.1, entitled Statement of Policy, Contractual Authority of School Superintendent, Contracts Not Requiring Sealed Bids or Competitive Negotiation of the policies of the Suffolk City School Board, second reading. It was tabled until later. We tabled it until a later meeting to receive a report from the superintendent detailing purchases made above the current $100,000 threshold that he has had to make during his tenure, denoting any purchases that were delayed. In the minutes here, it states during its current year, that should read due to this policy. So the report was supposed to detail purchases made above the current $100,000 threshold that he has had to make during his tenure, denoting any purchases that were due to this policy. That's how it should have read, and that's the report.
Okay, we need a motion.
I make a motion to make the amendment that Board Member Slingloff just stated.
Second.
Been properly moved in second. Are we ready to vote?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Dr. Brittingham.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Board Member Byram.
Yes.
Board Member Riddick.
Yes.
Board Member Slingloff.
Yes.
Vice Chair Howell. Board Chair Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Now we have our public speakers.
It is the intent of the school board to ensure that the affairs of the board be conducted in an open and orderly manner, that all persons desiring to address the board are afforded an opportunity to do so in the order in which they sign up to speak, that all persons in attendance may observe and hear the proceedings of the board without distraction, and that the members of the board and board employees are able to transact the business of the board with minimal disruption. Any persons addressing the board shall, 1, confine their comments to matters germane to services, policies, and affairs of the school board or Suffolk Public Schools. 2, refrain from words or statements which, from their usual construction and common acceptance, are construed as insults intended to incite violence or breach of the peace. 3, refrain from obscenity, vulgarity, or other breach of respect. 4, comply with the time limit for public comment as set by the board, which can be up to 5 minutes, unless the board, through the exercise of its discretion, decides to allow less than 5 minutes for public comment. 5, refrain from cumulative or repetitive remarks. And 6, refrain from making any comment regarding any pending student discipline or employee grievance matters. The appropriate forum for such matters is the applicable administrative hearing provided by state law or, where appropriate, court proceeding. Persons must not engage in disorderly, disruptive, or boisterous conduct such as, but not limited to, making noise, use of profane language or obscene gestures, yelling, or similar demonstrations that disrupts or disturbs the peace and good order of the meeting. Persons addressing the board may deliver to the board or its clerk written materials including reports, statements, exhibits, letters, or signed petitions, and may also make use of any chart or graph during their verbal presentation. The school board welcomes comments from the public as appropriate. Board members will listen to public comment but will not comment, deliberate, or take action on them. The board chair may direct the superintendent to investigate items and report back to the school board at a subsequent meeting. The chair or other presiding officer shall preserve decorum and shall decide all questions of public order subject to appeal to the board. At the request of the chair, a city police officer shall act as sergeant-at-arms at tonight's board meeting. The officer shall, under the direction of the chair or other presiding officer, have charge of the meeting area and waiting areas and corridors adjacent thereto, and shall prevent disorder or interruption of the business of the board. Our first speaker is Mr. Travis McKinney, and he will address remarks made from previous board meeting.
Good evening, Travis McKinney. So, things say you get scrolled off. I don't understand why this board member here is confused as to the other board members shutting down these motions. It's been going on forever as far as holding the administration to account for anything that you guys requested from me. I said I listened to the superintendent speak last week on his remarks concerning the candidate forum for the school board candidates coming up for the election cycle. And I had to sit back and really ask him a question: why would he bother with such a thing? And it dragged me back to remember I wrote a paper several years ago about mercenaries and the impacts, economical impacts and social impacts to Africa over the course of the years. And unfortunately, that practice with Russia is still going on in Africa today. But regardless, one of the theses or the premises of one of the resources I read talked about power. Who has power? What would they do to maintain power? What would they do to keep power? And I broke down this argument of what the superintendent threw out there the last board meeting down to power. See, because when I listened to the superintendent start talking about how the school system is the victim because somebody's demanding a forensic audit, and how it's defamatory and how it's insulting and how it causes stress, fear, and death and destruction to the administration for people to put out that suggestion about having a forensic audit. But what he's really doing, he targeted 3 candidates. When I went back and watched the forum, there's 3 specific candidates that talked about an audit to the school board and asking for transparency. See, that's a political targeting. So that speech was more about power than was any personal insult that he wishes to convey to the public. I spoke to you guys last year about May this time frame about how you create a construct and how you target the construct, then you try to build consensus behind it. So that was just kind of silliness, I think, on his part to go after inane statements made by board members who say, in my borough, my people want to know, have more transparency to the budget. See, there's more to a forensic budget than just a criminal act or accusation. There's 10 reasons beside a forensic investigation for criminal activities as to why you should have a forensic budget. Legal compliance, due diligence, asset recovery, loss prevention, reputation protection, improved internal controls. See, they also identify inefficiencies and gaps and things that could be improved in the audit in the general budgeting processing. Valuable insights and recommendations, employee deterrence, ethical culture, enhanced risk mitigation, and the list goes on. So you don't have to have a forensic budget just because you think somebody's accusing you of a criminal act. And for him to make that statement out there, I think was rather audacious. When you have the wants to know, have a little bit more transparency to the budget concerns, why not have a forensic budget? If you're so clean, you got 10 years, 20 years, or whatever, then invite a forensic budget to come in and take a look at your house. That improves your reputation if there's nothing to be found. If there's nothing to be hidden, then all that does is add credibility to your statements when they say there's nothing going on. So why the fear-mongering about that is beyond me, why he would create that, other than power, and specifically targeting candidates that are up for election. He sits there and makes this statement, hey, vote for candidates that support public schools. I'm trying to figure out which candidate out there is trying to tear down public schools. I haven't come across any statements from any of them saying down with public schools. So that's kind of silliness on its own part also. My goodness. Anyway, I come here to sit here and talk about a few things. You know, that drumbeat out there about athletic departments getting louder is starting to hit that social media thing with a vengeance. You know, I'm pretty sure that you guys are aware of the accusation, allegations, or whatever the silliness is going on with Lakeland Athletics. I made mention that that drumbeat's out there and seems to be getting a little louder. And I think that that's probably something that the superintendent might really want to address, because that may be a real concern, that people out there in that public domain that doesn't have access or know what goes on behind the scenes or doesn't have any clue what the real story is, maybe we should hear what that real story is. That's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Angela Kilgore, regarding policy revisions, athletic department audit, request for new school board attorney.
She's not here.
Next speaker, Jamar Carter, regarding school zone speed limits.
Here.
Next speaker, Dr. Nathan Moore, regarding renaming John Yates Middle School.
Not here.
There are no more speakers.
So now we move to business by board members. Dr. Brittingham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thankful for the discussions that we have had on the dais tonight again. When I started this position almost 2 years ago, discussion was little to none. And so moving forward, going into almost my second year sitting on the board, I really do appreciate the idea of discussions, open discussions. discussions that are not tainted with accusations, but open discussions about the business that we're supposed to be conducting for Suffolk Public Schools. Just because we ask a question doesn't mean that there is some sort of ulterior motive. Trying to understand the totality of all of these ordinances and resolutions is a lot of work. And it's important that we understand as we craft policy that it's aligning with Virginia code. So to ask the questions, to have the discussions, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's healthy. I think it's good. And I think that we need to keep in perspective that we all have a job to do up here. And part of that job is to have really robust discussions so that the constituents can hear the things that we're working on, the things that we're thinking about, the direction that the board is moving in oversight over the school system. I really wish that the collaboration was there and the spirit of what we are endeavoring to do was seen, and not throwing allegations every single time about narratives that are not true. Ultimately, it is our job 7 days prior to a board meeting to receive all the information that is brought to us, to be prepared to sit on the dais and do the work that we were elected to do. 7 days is a lot, but it's not with the totality of information that comes in our direction. And so to ask these questions together while we sit together on this dais is important. Yes, we can send emails. Yes, we can have one-on-one conversations, but I think here is where the mind of the board gets to collaborate the best. We get to talk about the things that are brought before us, and we seek to make the best decisions possible for the school division. So again, to all of my fellow board members, I am grateful for us to be able to sit on this board and to have these conversations and to talk openly and to ask important questions, intelligent questions. I hope you guys have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Riddick?
First and foremost, I want to continue to thank the Suffolkians who reside in the historic Suffolk Borough for their opportunity that they allow me to continue to represent them as their voice here on the Suffolk City School Board. I just have some good news highlights that I want to talk about in a recommendation that I want to do. But on September the 25th, I was able to, thanks to the support of local businesses, Straighten Up and Fly Right, Tabernacle of Refuge, and other community stakeholders, we were able to donate a big load of school supplies to Booker T. Washington Elementary School. The donations are still coming in, so we will be going back to a local Suffolk Public Schools. These donations included book bags, notebooks, and other array of school supplies. We have made it our business to talk less and work more. So with that being said, on Wednesdays, there is a tutoring program that is available for anyone who reside in the city of Suffolk, that is elementary, grades 3, all the way to grades 8. We will be providing free tutoring at no cost. If you would like more information, you're more than welcome to email me personally email me at my SPS email, and I'll forward you the information. I'm just super excited about the news that I've been receiving from our community stakeholders and the parents that live throughout the borough as they've been talking about their child's first 30 days of school. I know it's been filled with, some bumps and bruises, but our teachers are doing an outstanding job. I think we're, 3 weeks away from the end of the first 9 weeks? It's moving fast. I'm super excited, but there's one action that I would like to refer to the Policy Review Committee. You heard me state this action earlier. I would like to refer Ordinance 2024/25-25 to the Policy Review Committee for amendments. The amendment should include suitable language that reflects the authority's intent to benefit local small businesses, thereby directly stimulating the local economy. And that's on the basis if Attorney Wallace says it's legal to do so. If he says it's not legal to do so, there's no need to go to policy review. But if he says that it is, I would like to make sure that that policy impact our local economy.
Which number again?
School Board Ordinance 2024/25-25. It's the one we just voted on tonight. That would be beneficial to our local small businesses. I just want to make sure that we got something in concrete, but I would also like, if possible, for us to talk about, Madam Chair, the benefit of having some type of videos or whatever we want to decide to do that could be a teach tool for our small businesses to know how to go after those RFPs. I don't know about you all, but I know I had a lot of small businesses, such as landscaping companies, who did reach out to me when they realized that there was an RFP about a landscaping project, that these are homegrown people who went through Suffolk Public Schools, who employ Suffolk citizens, and they thought it would have been advantageous if they would have had an opportunity to apply about it. So that's the driving force, to make sure that everyone has the information, not just those who have access to the information, but we're teaching the masses how to reach the information, how to go after it. No secrets, no, did you do this and you get that? None of that, just providing them access in real time to information. Thank you so much for your time, Madam Chair. Y'all keep sweet and enjoy your day.
Board Member Swingler?
On that note, if it does go back to Policy Review Committee, I would just like them to pay particularly close attention to the way it is worded compared to the way the Virginia Code is worded, because there are differences, there are words and misplaced modifiers that change the meaning of the sentences in that policy, and that was noted. And I didn't have the opportunity for that to go back, but if Mr. Riddick is able to get that reviewed, please add that onto his request for that policy review. On a different note, I want to congratulate the Kings Fork High School Marching Band for an outstanding performance at the Hopewell High School Wonder City Classic. The recognitions of first place, I think one second place was in there, was amazing. And I just want to congratulate them for a job well done. That is certainly something to celebrate. And also I would like to acknowledge Suffolk News Herald's 2024 Best Principal, yay, in my borough, Mr. Derek Bryant of Kings Fork High School. Hoorah, way to go, Mr. Bryant. And also in my borough at Hill Point Elementary, best teacher, Ms. Megan Farbaugh. So I want to congratulate both of them. That's fantastic. I'm proud to be your board member and to say that you're my teacher and my principal in my borough. So congratulations to you, and I pray you all have a great evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Barron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few comments on the work session we had this evening. I want to thank RRMM and Mr. Napier for your excellent information. I think the update on the facilities and all of that information was a rewarding experience for all of us. We had a good dialect going. A lot of good questions and concerns were addressed. And it resolved a lot of issues, I think, that people didn't quite understand. A lot of food for thought moving forward. Thank you for that excellent presentation, and RRM&M, and anybody who had collaboration on that. Following up on what Ms. Slingloff just said about Mr. Derek Bryant, I will always praise my students, of course, and Derek is one of my former students, and when I saw that award and recognition, I was really brought to tears almost, because I think about the road he has traveled. He was a great Nancy Monroeville scholar, athlete. He is homegrown Suffolk. That's what makes me so proud. And one of my former students. And I congratulate Derek again, and I'll be sending him out something special, I hope, to reward him. He does an excellent job, and I think the community recognizes that. And then, of course, our recognition this evening for our new Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Caitlin Letner. You know, she's a homegrown girl, too. Nobody mentioned she graduated from Lakeland High School and became a teacher, came back here after she went to Radford and became a teacher and worked her way up. This shows what our school system produces. Every day we're producing stellar people that come back to us. And I'm just so delighted that Dr. Letner is going to be with us in that position. A few years back, a member on our board, Ms. Sherry Story, introduced me to Dr. Letner. Well, she wasn't Dr. Letner then, and she was a science teacher, similar, if she knew Ms. Letner. And she told me, she said, you know, she has a lot of good qualifications. You better watch her. She's a rising star. And this proves the point right here. But we have invested in these young people. They've come through our school system, and now they're going to be our leaders of the future. And they're all around us. And that is the great reward of having served on this board for 16 years and been able to see the fruition of those things. And of course, my dear former student over here, sitting beside me often, you know, I look at her and I think, what a wonderful reward the years have brought. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome, thank you. Dr. Book?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to first give a shout out to the VSU College of Education. I retired from the Virginia State University College of Education, and I know that the teachers there are well prepared. I know they are for a fact, and so I'm looking forward to many of them coming to Suffolk Public Schools. Many of them are here already and have been doing well. Every time I see a teacher of the year who graduated from Virginia State, I mark them, or Hampton University. I was chair of the university, of the College of Education there as well. But I'm thankful for them and for them coming back here to serve. And so I'm glad they were here, and I'm glad that you got to see them, and I'm glad you were impressed with them. So keep an eye on them. We do teachers, counselors, principals, and superintendents. Several of my superintendents are in different places in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm always proud of my students who are in the fine and performing arts. I'm glad my partner in crime is here with me this evening. Mrs. Mayo is here this evening, but we were excited always about fine and performing arts. And so I'm proud of our bands and what they have done all over this city, from the parades to the band competitions to everywhere they go. And I know I made a comment before, but one principal in Chesapeake, I know because we sing together, made a comment about Kings Fork Band and about the children and their performance and their deportment, which was impressive to me when they came to his school. Our football team beat his school, and the band just did a wonderful job. And so I just have to say a shout out to our students because they represent us well wherever they go. I want to also make a comment about the joint meeting that we had with City Council. It was so nice to have been recognized by those folks. Many of them, I've worked with them for 12 years. It has always been interesting to me, and I'll say this, and hopefully it will get out there, because a lot of misinformation exists, and it needs to be corrected. I have always worked very closely with my councilman, Mr. Lew Ward, Vice Mayor Lew Ward. He gave me flowers, they gave me fruit, and it was very nice to be recognized. But I've always worked with Councilman Bennett, who was Vice Mayor, Councilman Williams, Councilman Butler Barlow has worked with us, Councilman Goldberg, Councilman Tester. All these people have been persons who supported public schools and supported Suffolk Public Schools. And I would suggest to anybody, when people put up that they support public schools, look at their voting records. The evidence is there. Before you vote, look at their voting records. You can see what people do, okay? Just saying. I've always had the cell phone number Mike Duman and I worked on a committee together. So the mayor and I have worked on a committee together and worked on a committee together over, well, about 12 years ago. So I've always been able to reach out to him, and he's always been able to reach out to me. And I'm not interested in being friends with people. I'm interested in being a colleague, a professional, and being respected by persons. And it doesn't matter what our person, we don't have to go out to dinner, we don't have to hang out together. We need to be respected by one another for the skills that we bring to the table and we bring as a board. And I do, if friendships develop, as they have, for me, for people that I did not know, but I do now, that's wonderful. That's icing on the cake. But it doesn't have to be that way to work together and function as a board and do the business of the board. I think people come to boards with the wrong impression, and it doesn't have to be that way. But I've always worked with these gentlemen, and when Mrs. Butler Barlow joined, with these ladies. And one of my dearest friends is the former mayor, Linda Johnson. So I want to say thank you to those persons who've consistently worked with us. And I've always maintained a relationship with the other people, whether they consistently work with us or not, in the 12 years that I've been here. I want to say also thank you for Mr. Williams for the gift that he gave to us as well. I want to say also that as people are presenting when you go to sessions, I'm not giving anybody a specific name, but as people are presenting when they go to sessions, I had the, I guess, misfortune to listen to someone say some very disparaging things about our college and career center. So I want to say, first of all, he didn't know what he was talking about. One, we do have a welding program. We got some recognition for our welding program last year. We do offer those kinds of programs at our Prudent Center, College and Career Center at Prudent. We have that. We also have over 400 certifications, industry certifications we had from just this graduating class, and that's not unusual. We have them every year. Students go from school to work, and they're already certified for the skills jobs that they hold. So we have those students, and they're ready to do what they do. Everybody doesn't have to go to college. Everybody isn't ready to go to college. Everybody doesn't go to college right now. Some students go to even in the missionary fields. Some students go to the missionary field. Some students go to the military. Students do all sorts of things when they leave Suffolk Public Schools. But our job is to prepare them, and I know that we've done an excellent job, as well as all of those who've done what they've done. So I just want to say thank you to our staff, to our teachers who work with them, and thank you to Caitlin. Congratulations, Caitlin. I know she had to leave, but thank you that you've hired her. We've seen her do some exceptional things, and we look forward to more for us. Thank you for this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Howe.
Good evening. My congratulations goes to the Nansemond River Band for taking first place in the Peanut Fest Parade. I am proud to be a Warrior alumni and to wear the red and black, though I do respect Miss Mayo's choice of blue everywhere I see her, and Lakeland and the support she shows there. I'm looking forward to the Peanut Festival performances tomorrow. I'm quite amazed there's not a chance of rain in the forecast for Peanut Fest weekend. So I encourage all of you to take advantage of that, because that is usually what happens around this time of year. Peanut Fest is a mud fest. It's not even in the forecast. So I'm going to hold the meteorologist to it if something happens. I had a town hall meeting on October 2nd. There were just a few parents that attended. I am thankful for the Creekside and Florence Bowser parents that attended. This town hall was requested by a couple of constituents in my borough, but they were not present. So should they hear this and like the updates that they had requested, I'm happy to provide them through an email or a phone call, which was my original offer. And I don't mind having town halls. I'm an elected official. I'm supposed to be accessible. And I will do that when it's appropriate and when it's requested to the best of my ability. On a little more serious note, I have to publicly and formally apologize to Kim tonight, because she and I have talked about ordinance 2024/25-25 at length over the past month or so, both of us trying to glean an understanding of its intent and its application. I was in support last month of the report that she requested, and I was also in support, as I had told her, of the policy itself because of what its intent is. I affirm also Mr. Riddick's intent in protecting small businesses specifically, and I agree with that as well. But in supporting the policy tonight by my vote, I did take part in looking the report that was requested last month that I do believe that Dr. Gordon and Ms. Forsman attempted to give. I will acknowledge there was a memo, there was information, but after discussion tonight and clarity was gained, it was not the full report as Kim quoted the minutes that we requested. And so it's not my intent to have disregarded that vote or disregarded that was the will of the board. It was my intent to support the policy. So I guess for my seat, I would just ask Dr. Gordon to remain in discussion with us about what it would take and what it would look like to provide the specified report that was originally intended after the clarification and conversation that ensued tonight. I don't have any other comments for you this evening. I am amazed what time it is. It's still today. And so I wish you all a wonderful evening and a restful, peaceful weekend.
Thank you. Let's get out of here before 9. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming, the staff and our guests. Thank you for your comments. I enjoy watching people come up and make their comments because I'm, part of my profession. I love to see what's on people's minds. And so, I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I just analyze. And all conversations, I love them. So whatever you come up here and say, I'm enjoying it. I listen to it, and I hear you. And I want to say a special thank you to Ms. Gardner because you do a lot over and above, and I want you to know that I appreciate everything that you do, and no one up here is perfect. And so I thank you for keeping me straight and making sure that I am where I'm supposed to be. So I just want to publicly thank you and Dr. Gordon and your staff and your team. Thank you for all of the work that you put in. And Mrs. Forsman, I always call you the $1 million lady. You take care of our finances, and according to the auditors, you do a great job, you and your team. Our conversations are fruitful. Whether we agree on everything, they are still fruitful. And I appreciate the board having conversation with us. That's how we grow. We're not going to always agree on everything, but we do listen to what each other say, and we take it in. To all the bands that's been awarded, great job. I'm a band girl. That's why I go to the football games, because my main thing is to see the band, just be honest with you. And when I was at Norfolk State on Saturday watching the band practice, I wasn't even aware that when I went to Nansemond River, they were going to be performing. So kudos to my alumni, Norfolk State Band, and I know Mrs. Branch, she loves Norfolk State Band as well as you were a cheerleader for Norfolk State University. I think you still cheer during our homecoming, which is coming up. So I hope you got that skirt ready. And I just want to say to Mrs. Mayo, it is always good to see you and your lovely friends that come and just sit with us and support us, and the school board. Thank you that once you left the board, you have not forgotten the board. So thank you very much. And everyone that has on their pink, thank you so much, because Dr. Gordon requested that on last month, and I've gotten some pictures, so I'm going to get some more before we leave. And I just want to say a special thank you to Dr. Buck and Dr. Branch for looking so beautiful in your pink, because I know you normally wear red and white.
Just red and white blended together.
Just thank you so much. And let me see, do I have anything else to say? I want you all to be safe. It's getting chilly now, so you can't wear those Daisy Dukes anymore. So wrap up. And wrap up and make sure that you keep yourself healthy, and make sure that the kids, it's going to be getting dark, so make sure your kids are not out there waiting for the bus in the dark by themselves. We have to be protective. Everybody's not nice like we are, so we just have to be watchful, okay? Thank you, everyone. That is it for my comments. Everything else, Do you want to stay? No, you don't want to stay. We move to adjourn.
One thing, please be sure to leave the information Mr. Waller gave you all on the dais. I need to collect all of that information.
Board members, please leave everything, just like Ms. Gardner said, that I think Attorney Waller left for us. You cannot take it home. I don't know, she said, that's what he said, so we're going to do what he said. We can take that up with him when he comes back.
Oh, okay. Here it is, right here.